Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto has angel bloodline council bashing. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by A.G.E, link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Ch.1 The new member in the family. In the dark night sounds can be ignored as nothing, but for 6-year-old Uzumaki Naruto, his screams were for the two shinobi chasing after him in an attempt to end his young life. He was currently running as hard as his feet can carry him through the forest, broadening the outskirts of the village, with two Chunin shinobi hot on his tail. It was all a simple night for Naruto, as he stayed as far away from the people in the village, seeing as how they were very bloodthirsty today. So he decided to stay in a different place for the night, so that way he won't be bothered by anyone and nobody would find him. It was all okay until the night came and next thing he knew he was being chased by two passing Chunin who thought he did something bad and was trying to punish him for it. He knew that he was too far away to call for the old man to help him and too tired to be able to outrun the ninja, seeing as how he hasn't eaten yet. I got to get away from them or else they'll hurt me again. The young boy thought as he ducked and weaved under branches to try to get away from the two rabid men behind him. "Am the demon, come back here and take what you deserve. After all, it's thanks to you that my girlfriend is dead and I won't have the opportunity to marry her," one of the Chunin said, with the other speaking as well. "Besides, I bet you miss hell, so why not allow us to send you back?" the second one said, with Naruto trying to speed up. As he ran, he continued to question the reason as to why people referred to him as demon, monster, or hell spawn. He would even ask the old man, but he would do nothing but say that it was too complicated for him to understand right now and that he'll tell him when he's older. As Naruto ran, he failed to see the tree stump on the ground and tripped over it and skidded along the ground before he slammed on another tree in an open part of the forest. Naruto coughed before looking up to see the men standing in front of him with dark smirks protruding from their faces. Naruto put his arms in front of his face and spoke in a shaky voice. "PP please see, don't hurt me. I didn't do anything," he said, with both men scowling before one of them spoke. "Yes you did, demon, and now it's time you pay the price," he said before he and his partner began to assault the 5-year-old blonde while said boy screamed for help but sadly was too far to receive any or have anyone that would help him. After 3 hours the two Chunin stopped and smiled at their handiwork, which was Naruto covered in bruises, scrapes, and cuts all over his body, but was miraculously still alive though barely conscious. The two Chunin were practically filled with happiness at what they've done and felt as if they were on top of the world right now. "Man, wait until the guys hear this, we'll be heroes among the villagers," he said, with his partner smiling at his partner. "I know, and something tells me that our lives will be much better after this night," he said before something happened to him that his partner would have never seen coming in a million years. The man that spoke was soon beheaded in front of his partner, with his partner looking shocked for a full 3 seconds before he turned his head to try and find the assailant. He wouldn't have the chance to do so, as his head was grabbed by a strong head with a grip being stronger than a python, wrapping its body around its prey and squeezing the life out of it. As he grabbed the assailant that had his hand on his skull, he heard the voice of said man speak to him. "A man that is proud of attacking a child and willing to proclaim it like a god-given name is not a man that deserves to live," the man said before fully closing his hand and caused the Chunin's skull to cave in before the body fell over, with the remaining portion of the skull oozing out the blood and brain juice of what was left over. The unknown man walked over to Naruto's unconscious body and picked him up. "You are going to become the most powerful entity to ever grace this world and will be the one to change it for the better," the man said before he walked away from the area with the 5-year-old Naruto in his arm. 24 hours later, Sarutobi Hiruzen stood at the window of his office and overlooked Konohagakure L, which had become a habit of his every day he's on the clock. Today he looked forward to just a normal day of doing paperwork and hoping that Naruto wasn't being attacked or chased by yet another mob this week. At times he hated this job, but at the current position they were in he had no choice but to keep it. Besides, if he could keep the position away from Danzo's crazy ass, then he must be doing something right. But today was different, as normally he would be hearing something on Naruto being chased or see the boy coming in the office to stay for a while until he felt safe enough to leave. Today he heard no yelling, no shouting, no screaming, nothing. Just silence, pure unadulterated silence, and that in itself scared him to high heaven. His doors then opened to reveal a Jounin who looked tired but was still able to speak clearly. "Hokage-sama, you need to see this right away. It's very urgent," he said, with the old man nodding before they both disappeared and later reappeared before a very gruesome scene. It was the bodies of the two Chunin that were killed last night, with most shinobi vomiting at how bad they were. Sarutobi, however, was glad that he seen the power of war, or else he too would be vomiting with the others. "What were the cause of deaths?" he asked, with one Jounin answering the question. One had his head sliced off cleanly from his shoulders, with the head landing about 3 feet away from his body. he said. He must have been hit by a strong swordsman before the man used his head like a baseball. What of the second one? Hiruzen asked. The second one appeared to have a struggle with the assailant before his skull was caved in, then ripped out. He said, but Sarutobi examined the body more before his eyes widened slightly. I can't be, he's supposed to be dead. Sarutobi said to himself before he looked back at the Jounin. So how do you think their times of death occurred? He asked. Well, we found 3 sets of footprints running from the village to this location, which means that they were either chasing the assailant or being chased by the assailant. They ran to here and remained here for a long period of time before the one that was beheaded was killed and was then followed with the other having his skull ripped out. The Jounin said with Sarutobi nodded and spoke up. Investigate the matter thoroughly as possible, then report whatever you find to me later. He said before he walked away while deep in thought. If you're still alive, then why did you show yourself now and what for? I really need a drink. Sarutobi thought before walking back towards his office. Elsewhere, Naruto moaned as he opened his eyes only to shut them when the light came in before he blinked a few times to take in his surroundings before hearing his door open. He looked up to see a beautiful woman with long black hair and stunning misty purple eyes walk in. Her attire was a black kimono with a sea blue haori with an image of snow on the bottom. Hello young man, it's good to see that you survived your ordeal. She said with an angelic-like voice that was like music to the boy's ears. Excuse me miss, but where am I and how did I get here? The young blonde asked with the woman sitting on the bed he laid in. Don't worry about that, as you could have lost your life. Ha, Slayer-sama not rescued you and brought you here to me. My name is Maya Tsukigi by the way. The woman said, identifying herself as Maya, with Naruto nodding before he looked at the lady. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, but can you tell me where this Slayer person is? Naruto asked with the woman nodding before she stood up. Sure thing, please follow me. Maya said with Naruto nodding and following the woman closely. As they walked, the boy got a good look at his surroundings and couldn't help but think that he was below ground, but it was where that worried him. Soon Maya stopped him before she placed her hand on a rock wall before it opened, which shocked the blonde boy, and walked into the room which had about 9 people within it. Naruto looked at all the people before him before one stood out among all of them as the leader. He looked like a man above his 60s with a long white mane on his head and long white goatee beard combo on his face, along with an eye patch over his right eye, with a scar going down his left eye to his jawline. He wore a white kimono with a dark blue sleeveless haori over it. His face spoke many years of wisdom and knowledge that he's seen over his lifetime, along with the battles he's fought in his time. The man looked at him with a critical eye before he spoke. How are you, child? After the ordeal I witnessed you go through, I figured you would have rested for a few more days. He said with Naruto answering quickly since this guy made him scared but at the time was safe. I generally heal fast for some reason, so whatever injuries I had would be gone the next day. He said with the old man stroking his bread. Interesting, boy, tell me your name. Slayer said with Naruto answering fast again. Uzumaki Naruto. The boy said fast with the old man's eyes widening slightly. And Uzumaki? I thought they were extinct after the Second Great War, but I have heard rumors of Konoha holding one of those silver angels in their grasps. Tell me boy, who are your parents? He asked with Naruto looking down. I don't know since I'm an orphan and every time I ask the old man he would just tell me that I'll learn when I'm older. He said with Slayer scowling. That damn Sarutobi, he's trying to baby this child and deprive him of his heritage instead of developing him into a fine shinobi and continue the legacy he's been given. He thought before he spoke again. Well my boy, thank you for meeting me, I'll be back later to ask you something important. He said with the young boy nodding head before he walked out. Later on, Slayer knocked on the door that held Naruto within it and soon the door opened to reveal Maya with a smiling Naruto in his bed. Hello Slayer-sama, what brings you by? Maya asked with the old man giving her a look that told her to leave. Maya nodded before saying goodnight to Naruto before leaving the room. Slayer then sat down in the chair previously occupied by Maya and looked the young blonde in the eye. Listen my boy, I believe that I may be able to help you figure out one of your parents. He said with Naruto's face lighting up in happiness. Really? You can? Please tell me, I want to know who they are. Naruto said with Slayer holding up one hand. Slow down for a moment, I told you I may know about one of your parents and I'm still unsure about it. He said with Naruto looking a bit disappointed before he looked at Slayer. Well, can you tell me at least? I would like to know about one of them at least. Naruto said with Slayer nodding. Very well then, I believe that your mother's name is Uzumaki Kushina or as she was known in her time as the Scarlet Angel. She was at one time my student for many years before we separated and she went around the elemental countries as a mercenary. Her power was as amazing as was her potential in what I taught her and it's through that I believe that you're her child. He said with Naruto looking amazed by that. Wow, I got the coolest mom in the world. But what does that have to do with me? He asked with Slayer smirking. I was about to get to that. I have bond with your mother that's never supposed to be broken, not even through death. It's through that bond and that bond alone that I have decided to take you in as my apprentice. He said with Naruto looking surprised. I shall teach you all that I know in terms of power and make you the most powerful entity in all the elemental countries. He said with Naruto looking shocked. Today everything was flipped upside down and this time it was going in Naruto's favor. 7 years later, Sarutobi Hiruzen stood at the window of his office as he smoked his pipe while totally ignoring the mountain of paperwork on the desk behind him. He truly hated that part of the job and was even more pissed off that he has yet to find the proper successor to take his place, thus allowing him to be free of this shit forever. But sadly things in the village haven't gotten any better now than they had when the yondaime died. First an incident with Kumo trying to kidnap the daughter of Hyuga Hiyashi, which would then lead his brother to sacrifice his life for the good of the clan, but the branch house didn't see it that way, so another rift was created within the clan. Then came the next incident with the destruction of the Uchiha clan, with only 2 members surviving it, which was Uchiha Mikoto and Uchiha Sasuke. Then came the news that Mikoto was pregnant with her 3rd child by her late husband Uchiha Fugaku, and lead to the birth of her now 7-year-old daughter, Uchiha Tsukiko. What was even worse was that the person responsible for the destruction of the clan was the survivor's own family member, Uchiha Itachi. And then came something that has been his personal mission for the past 7 years, the finding and retrieving of the missing Uzumaki Naruto. To this day he still had no idea on how Naruto vanished out of thin air, but he guessed that it had to do with the murder of those 2 Chunin all those years ago. He was also thinking on who the person was that killed them, but it didn't matter now, for all he wanted was to find the child and bring him home. He sighed as he turned to get ready to work on the paperwork before he heard a commotion outside of his door. Hey you, stop right there. You can't enter the Hokage's office. Someone stop him. The voice said before another commotion was heard and resulted in the man being thrown into the room and removing the door off the hinges. Sarutobi looked at the person who did it and gasped at who he saw. It was a young man that looked no older than 13 with a look that almost made him look more like a regal figure by appearance. He wore black hakama pants with a black kimono top and a silver obi around his waist, along with brown sandals on his feet. He also wore a silver haori over the cloths that also had black flames on the bottom. On his obi was an okatana securely fashioned on the belt and looked intimidating by just the handle alone. But what surprised him was the boy's spiky blonde hair that went all the way to his neck with the coldest set of sapphire blue eyes he has ever seen. But what drawn his attention the most were the familiar-looking whisker-like marks on the boy's face, marks that reminded him of a boy he knew 7 years ago. Sarutobi Hiruzen felt the words he was trying to say get caught up in his throat before he spoke. Naruto, is that you? Hiruzen asked with the blonde boy nodding. Yes old man, Uzumaki Naruto. The war angel has returned. Naruto said with an emotionless tone. This was the day that marked his return. This was the day that dawned the era of the War Angel in Konoha, and boy would it be a good one. Ch.2 Return of the War Angel. What's up everyone, welcome to chapter 2. Now I know that I said that I wouldn't update this story until I had 50 reviews, and some of you were wondering why I asked for that many. The reason is because I just wanted to see if I have fans that are real fans, and so far only 30 people proved it when they left reviews, 5 of them. I don't even need to question when they say that they are fans, well over 150 did the exact opposite and ignored my wish. If you make something that over 150 people see, you would want at least half leaving something to go by. Tenraku Hitatsu had over 500 hits within the first hour of being updated and 10 reviews within the second hour. I don't like the looks of that. However, 30 is a good amount along with the amount of favorites this story got in the alerts, so while I'm 20 reviews short, this chapter should get me to 50 easily. Now over the time I was going over the ideas this story would get and the constant reminder of my crossovers from the original Tenraku, so I came up with a second story that will hold those ideas. So all in all, Tenraku Hitatsu shall now receive 2 remakes instead of 1. That was and still is one of my most popular stories, even though it is very ignorant, although my playing the 4 Devils story has exceeded that recorded set for me. Now anyway, let's get it on. Sarutobi looked at the blonde-haired boy before him, since after all he hasn't seen the child in well over 7 years. He quickly formed some seals to see if it was a genjutsu, but after a few hand signs and seeing the scene not changing, he ran towards the blonde boy and hugged him. After a little bit Sarutobi released his hold on the boy and looked him over. My goodness boy, where have you been for the last 7 years? He asked as he walked back to his desk and sat down with Naruto following suit. It's a long and complicated story that would only be more of a bitch to explain than go through. All I need you to do is understand that I have returned from my long departure and I now wish to be a shinobi of this place. He said with a tone that Sarutobi has only recognized from one person in his lifetime, and that person was supposed to be dead. Naruto, is there by any chance that you were trained under a man named Slayer? He asked with Naruto nodding his head. Yes, A.G.E, but I must ask that you keep what has been said to yourself. That man doesn't need his name to be tarnished any further than what has already been done. Naruto said with Sarutobi sighing deeply before he pulled out a note and wrote some words down before handing it to the boy, who read it before placing it in his pocket. When you enter the academy, show them that note and it will get you into their graduation exam today. He said with Naruto nodding before he got up from his seat. He then began to vanish in a swirl of feathers before he was gone, and the feathers turned into dust. Show off. Hiruzen muttered under his breath before he went back to his paperwork. Academy doors. Naruto appeared before the door of the academy in a swirl of feathers. The blonde boy looked at the building before pushing the door open and stepped inside. He then walked towards the door Hiruzen told him to go and soon found it in clear view. He knocked on the door, which came with a quick come in response, which the boy then stepped in after that. A.G.E no Iruka looked at the blonde-haired boy in confusion, seeing as how he never seen the boy around the village before. Yes, can I help you with something? He asked with Naruto pulling out the note Sarutobi gave him. Are you A.G.E no Iruka? The boy asked, which the scared man nodded to. Naruto then handed him the note Hiruzen wrote, which he read not once, but twice, in order to be sure that it was the real deal. When everything checked out, he turned to his students to give them the announcement, even though they were already paying attention to the new kid that entered the room. Okay class, today we have a new student joining us. He said with many of the kids looking confused, though only one asked the question on their minds. But sensei, the year is already over. How can he become a new student when today is graduation day? The girl that asked held pink hair and was known by the name of Haruno Sakura because he has been on a training mission for the past 3 years and has returned today. Hokage-sama felt that it was only fair for him to graduate with the current graduating class. He said with Naruto walking up the stairs and sat beside a boy wearing a high-collar trench coat with black sunglasses. The boy looked at him for a moment before he looked away and looked towards his teacher. Now then, due to the arrival of Naruto, we now hold 27 students as opposed to the 26 we had. So now here are your genin teams. Team 1, he said with Naruto hearing the sounds of kids cheering about what team they were on. The boy could already tell who had potential as he looked around the room and set a target point on each person. The one with the pineapple-shaped hair looks to be a strategist. The big one would make a good defense expert. The dog boy would make an excellent tracker, and the one beside me would make a good tracker as well. The one with the duck-shaped hair looks like an offensive type, but his power level is too weak to be a true offensive type. The wide-eyed girl would make another good tracker, and the blonde one would make a great interrogator. The last one is the pink one, but she would probably be a healer sometime in the future. These teams are set up for the best support type, so I would have to say that the trackers would become a team, the strategist, defensive, and interrogator would make up the next team, and the last would be the pink one and the duck head. Naruto thought before hearing his name. Team 7 shall consist of Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and lastly Uzumaki Naruto. Your Jounin sensei will be Hada Kakashi. Iruka said with Sakura cheering on Sasuke being in her team, but paused at hearing Naruto's name. She began to wonder what would happen with him on her team, but chalked it up as nothing serious. After all, she knew her Sasuke-kun was the strongest person here. Naruto simply nodded his head since he figured out what would occur. Team 8 shall consist of Inyazuka Kiba, Hyuga Hinata, and lastly Aburame Shino. Your Jounin sensei will be Yuhi Kurenai. He said with a group of 3 nodding their heads. Naruto once more knew that he was right, since these 3 teams were the best here. Team 9 is still in circulation, so we won't have a new one. He said before moving on to the next team. Team 10 shall consist of Akamichi Choji, Yamanaka Ino, and lastly Nara Shikamaru. Your Jounin sensei will be Sarutobi Asuma. He said with Naruto nodding for the last time, his skills in prediction were still sharp. These are the newest teams, you all shall be meeting your senseis as soon as they arrive. Iruka said with everyone talking amongst themselves before their teachers arrived. 2 hours went by before the only ones left in the room were Team 7. Sakura was frowning at Sasuke while silently cursing the man for being late. Sasuke wasn't even paying half attention to her, but would let his eyes travel to the blonde sitting on the other end. The boy sat with his eyes closed and was meditating his body to grow stronger than what it already was. He then opened his eyes before he looked towards the door. The others were surprised by his sudden movement before they turned there as well. The door then opened to reveal a man dressed in dark blue cargo with a kunai holster strapped to his right thigh, shinobi-styled sandals, long-sleeved turtleneck shirt, and fingerless gloves with metal plates on the back. He was wearing a standard forest green Jounin flak vest with 2 scroll pouches over both the left and right breast, along with a metal zipper going down the center. A dark blue face mask covered the lower half of his face, his silver hair defying the very gravity itself and angled to the left. His headband was tied around his head and slanted over his left eye. He looked around the room before seeing the group of 3 before him. Are you 3 Team 7? He asked in a nice voice. You're late. Sakura screeched while Sasuke cringed at the volume of her voice. Kakashi looked around before his eye turned into his patented eye smile. My first impression of the group is that I don't like you. Meet me on the roof in 1 minute. He said before leaving in a puff of smoke. Naruto scowled before he spoke to himself, but the others heard him. That bastard thinks he can come late and get away with it. I got something for his ass. Naruto said before he left in a swirl of feathers. The other two were shocked by this before they became jealous at the sight before they got up and walked towards the roof. Once they arrived, they saw Naruto sitting on the step in front of their teacher. Both Genin then sat down on the steps and looked towards the leader of the group. Okay everyone, now since we are going to be teammates I feel that we should get to know each other better. So tell me your likes, dislikes, hobbies, goals for the future, and your specialty. He said with Sakura raising her hand. Sensei, why don't you go first so that way we'll get a better understanding. She said with Kakashi nodding. Very well then, my name is Hada Kakashi, my likes, dislikes, and my goals are none of your concern. My hobbies, well I have many hobbies and my specialty is in ninjutsu. He said before pointing toward Sakura. Okay you first Pinky. He said with Sakura glaring at him before she spoke. My name is Haruno Sakura, I would have to say that my specialty is my smarts, my likes are well a certain someone, glances at Sasuke, my hobbies are, she said glancing at Sasuke again, my dream is to, looks at Sasuke again and squeals in delight. She said with Kakashi sweat dropping. And your dislikes? No pig. The girl yelled with the man nodding his head before pointing to Sasuke. Your next sunshine. Kakashi said with Sasuke glaring at him before he spoke. My name is A.G.E Sasuke, I don't particularly care for anything, and I certain hate a lot of things. My specialty is ninjutsu, and my goal is only but an ambition, which is to rebuild the honor of my clan and to kill a certain person. He said. Sasuke-kun is so hot. Sakura thought to herself. Oh great I have an avenger on my team. Kakashi thought to himself. This boy will only live a life that will lead to his death. Naruto thought before noticing that Kakashi was looking towards him. Okay that's nice to know, next up is you Goldilocks. He said with Naruto looking him in the eye and made Kakashi kinda double take on what he said. The boy's eyes was beyond emotionless, one could possibly say that they were soulless. The only thing you three need to know about me is that my name is Uzumaki Naruto. Only those that are strong and earn my respect are allowed to learn more about me. He said with all three kinda taken aback by his statement. So I got a fangirl, an avenger, and an unknown warrior. What the fuck was the Hokage smoking? He thought before he spoke again. Well then since that is all I have to say, I want you all to be at training ground 24 tomorrow morning. And don't eat breakfast or else you'll throw up. He said before disappearing. Naruto then stood up and walked away before Sasuke jumped as well. Oh, fight me. He said with Naruto stopping for a moment but didn't turn to face him. No, I don't have time for you Uchiha. He said as he continued his walk. Don't you walk away from me. He said as he ran towards Naruto with his fist cocked back. Pathetic. Naruto said before he grabbed the boy's arm. He then spun around and kicked the boy's extended arm. He then grabbed the Uchiha's throat and threw him towards the ledge of the building. Sasuke flew into the air until he flew over the railing and was at the mercy of free-falling to the ground. Sakura saw all this and screamed in panic before hearing nothing. She then looked up and saw Naruto holding Sasuke's leg over the ledge, with said boy trying not to panic. Look at you Uchiha. You obviously don't know how to pick your opponents right and if it were up to me, you'd be hitting the pavement with your blood pooling around your body. He said before he loosened his grip, allowing Sasuke to fall a little further to the ground below, but the blonde boy kept his hold. Naruto then scoffed before he tossed him towards the door that leads to the stairs. Sasuke crashed into the door and landed next to the step that leads to the next level below. Sakura gasped in fear before running toward Sasuke to see if he was alright. Pathetic. He said before he vanished in a swirl of feathers. He needed to see what the other teams were like or else he would request a promotion at that moment. Elsewhere, Team 10 stood in their training field after just finishing their introductions to each other. The Jounin leader was a relatively tall man with a black goatee. In his mouth was a cigarette. He was wearing normal-looking Jounin attire, but two trenched knives adorned his fists. His team consisted of Nara Shikamaru, Yamanaka Ino, and Akimichi Choji, but could tell just by looking at the three of them that they were going to be a big pain. He was just starting his lecture until something caught his attention. He then turned his head to the side to catch the appearance of a blonde-haired boy dressed in samurai garb approach the group with his face holding an emotionless expression. The other three followed suit and noticed that it was the new kid that arrived today. They were wondering what he was doing here and would have asked had his expression not given off this ask me something and I'll kill you kind of vibe. The boy then approached the leader of the group and stopped in front of him with a calculating eye. You're the leader of this group? He asked with the bearded man nodding his head. Yes, I am Saratobi Asuma and I am the sensei of Team 10. You don't seem familiar to me, care to tell me your name? He said with Naruto nodding his head. I am Uzumaki Naruto, I was out of the village for half of my life, so it's only logical that you wouldn't know me. He said with Asuma nodding before he looked the boy over and noticed his sword sheathed on his waist. Those are quite the swords you have Naruto-san, where did you get them? He asked with the other three genin looking at the boys' weapons and saw their handles. These were gifts given to me by my master. He made them for me when he taught me Kenjutsu and they've been my treasure ever since. He said with Asuma nodding. Ino frowned when the boy appeared to be finished, so she decided to try to get more information out of him in hopes of knowing more. After all, she had a thing about knowing everything and everyone around her. Naruto-san, where did you go, or better yet, who was your master? Ino asked with the blonde boy turning his head towards her, causing her shudder in the cold feeling his eyes gave her. That information is only worthy to those that are either stronger than me or has earned my respect. You on the other hand are far too weak to even be considered a worthy warm-up for me. He said with everyone gasping at the amount of disrespect his voice held. Ino however got over her shock and got up to her feet with a pissed-off expression. What did you say? Ino said with her usual loud voice. The other men cringed while Naruto only remained in his calm demeanor. I said that you are weak, plain and simple. Your power level isn't even worth the time to wash my clothes. He said before looking at the other two boys and scowled at them. You two are weak as well. The big one looks like he's about to chip away from a heart attack, while the pineapple head just seems to be too lazy to even wipe his own ass. All three of you are even weaker than that A.G.E. He said with Shikamaru and Choji's eyes widening at his insulting of them, but soon backed away when they heard the boy call Sasuke weak. Sasuke-kun is not weak, you baka. She said before charging at him with her arm behind her head. She sent the fist forward and collided with the boy's forehead, but to her shock, the boy simply remained still, while the girl pulled her hand back at the pain she felt. Her fist felt like she just punched a tree for an hour straight before removing it from the hardwood. Naruto then walked up to her and looked her dead in the eye, making the girl shake in fear. I can see it in your eyes, the life that you once and still live up to this day. You were spoiled by your father and mother to the point that you could cry. You never once tried to grow on your own and earn what you felt you deserved. You want to be in control of things that you come by, and if the situation is not in your favor, you retaliate over nothing. Another thing I see about you is that you don't know how to be your person, as you are just like that pathetic pink bitch that is on my team. You also are obsessed with your looks down to the very skin molecule on your face and to the last hair molecule on your head. You would intentionally allow your skills to drop if it meant that you would gain boys' favor, not even bothering to acknowledge that you are weak. Naruto said with Ino looking ready to cry at what he was saying. He wasn't criticizing her, he was berating her in every form. No one has ever talked to her like Naruto was doing now, and while she wanted to knock his teeth down his throat, there was nothing she could do but listen to his berating of her. For the first time in her life, she wasn't in control of something. However, I will admit that you do hold tremendous potential in you, as do all of your teammates, but you will never get there the way you are now. Naruto said before he turned around and walked away. Asuma looked at his students and saw that all three of them held the same look in their eye. There was something about this guy that made them drive to prove him wrong. He was silently in awe at the sight before looking at the form of the retreating blonde and had to feel that he respected the boy already. Okay then guys, tomorrow we will be having your entrance exam. Show up here at 0800 tomorrow, so get some rest and have a big breakfast in the morning. You'll need the extra energy tomorrow. He said before he vanished in a puff of smoke while his team simply walked away silently. Elsewhere, teammates stood before their red-eyed teacher as the woman finished her lecture on what would occur the next day. The woman was about to dismiss them when she felt a power output appear in her field. She looked to the side to find a boy appearing in a swirl of feathers and walked towards her and her team. The genin instantly remembered him to be the boy that came into the class earlier this morning and appeared to be very powerful. At least Tanada and Shino thought that, while Kiba simply thought the kid was trying to look tough. Hello, may I help you with anything? She asked with Naruto stopping in front of her and looked her in the eye. Kurenai felt a little unnerved by the boy's eyes and almost felt like she was in a frozen wasteland. You appear to be the leader of this group, are you not? Naruto asked with the woman nodding her head. Why yes I am, my name is Yuhi Kurenai. Who are you? She asked with Naruto looking at her before answering. Uzumaki Naruto, although I find it hard for you to be of the Yuhi clan. The last I heard there was only one left out there. He said with her looking shocked before answering. Yes, that is my clan name, although I don't appreciate you making fun of my family name. She said with Naruto snorting. I'm not making fun of your clan name, as I've come to respect the Yuhi clan and all that they have done during the Third Great War and the Grass Rain conflict years ago. However, you don't appear to be within the Yuhi clan, as they are well known for their warrior posture and love of the color brown. If I had to guess, I would say that you are a genjutsu type that compares itself to the abilities of the Kurama clan within this village. He said with the red-eyed woman looking shocked by that. How did you know that? I never met you before, nor did I ever tell you my fighting style. She said with Naruto snorting once more. Illusions are not a way of fighting Kurenai-san, as they take too long to work with and are just a flashy form of imagination coming to life. The Yuhi clan was once known as one of the 13 warlords, as they were one of the last remaining pure Kenjutsu clans. They were prided upon by the use of their affinity with flames and illusions, but none the more than their sword style called Phoenix Rage. You don't appear to have ever known or held a sword, which tells me that you were neglected the knowledge of your clan or you were taken here by migration. He said with Kurenai's eyes widening. How did you know? She was saying before Naruto simply held up his hand. I know many things around this world that some would pay high price to learn. He said before looking at the other three genin team, although I would admit that your team isn't exactly what I would call impressive either. He said with the other three gasping. What do you mean? Said the girl named Hinata, who found herself twiddling her fingers at the presence of this boy. I'm saying that all three of you are weak, although not as weak as the A.G.E or the Haruno. He said with the boy that looked like a human-dog hybrid stand up with his little puppy doing the same. Hey, you can't talk to Hinata like that. He said with Naruto looking him in the eye before he spoke. Calm yourself down, Fido, before I put you down. He said with the boy snarling at the blonde before he charged Naruto. I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget. He yelled, pulling out a kunai. He took a stab at Naruto's face, which only caused the boy to turn his head to the side, allowing the blade to pass by his face. Kiba scowled before spinning on the heel of his foot and held the kunai in a reverse grip. Naruto simply backhanded the boy's arm, making him let go of the kunai due to the pain. Kiba grabbed his arm in pain before looking up to find Naruto in front of him with an exposed palm. Wind release. Gale storm palm, he called out, sending a blast of wind that hit Kiba, which sent him flying into a tree before he fell to the ground unconscious. Everyone was shocked at how easily the boy defeated the dog-human hybrid and knew that this boy's power fit his look. Shino quickly stood up and decided to take a different approach to speaking with the boy. What would give you the impression that we are weak? He asked with Naruto looking at him, which made the boy silently thank God that his clan wore the getup that they did, as he was sweating small bullets around his head. The reason I say that is because I can read the auras of others by either being in their presence or touching them. Your aura levels show little to no amounts of power that would give me a challenge in the foreseeable future, with the prime example being Fido over there. He said, pointing to the still unconscious form of Kiba. However, unlike him, I do see strong potential in all three of you. He said before he looked over to the wide-eyed girl and stared at her for a moment, which caused the girl to blush. You're of the Hyuga clan, correct? He asked with the girl nodding her head. Why, yes, I am. She said with Naruto raising a small eyebrow before he spoke. Then why are you filled with such high amounts of self-doubt and hatred? The Hyuga clan is known for their patented cold Hyuga face and their abilities to stand with high posture and class. You lack both of those criterias, may I ask why? He said, feeling like this girl needed to be helped soon but would be in need of guidance. My Otu-san. He tells me I am weak and a man not worthy of the name Hyuga. Otu-san says my little sister is stronger than I am, T2. Hinata stuttered out. Naruto frowned at that before looking towards her teacher. Is this true? He asked with Kurenai nodding her head. Yes, I've known Hinata since she was a child and I've taken care of her almost all the time when her father doesn't want anything to do with. I've seen him say things to her that most children would cry at the moment they heard it. She said with Naruto nodding before he spoke. I will take care of her father, but I want you to find her someone that will help her through her problems. Someone that has a high amount of confidence in them to break her from her shell. He said with the red-eyed woman nodding before she asked something that the blonde was pretty sure he knew was coming. So, can you tell me more about my clan? My grandparents migrated here with my father before they were killed, so we never knew of our family. She said with Naruto looking at her before he spoke. Unfortunately, I can't tell you until you're at a point where you can handle a sword properly. If you wish to be serious about learning from your clan, come seek me out. I'm not too hard to find. He said before he walked away from the group of three since Kiba was still out of it. Kurenai watched the boy walk away before she looked at Hinata and saw the girl was pushing her fingers together with a strong blush on her face. She couldn't like him, could she? But then again, he is very interesting. Kurenai thought to herself before she found herself thinking about the mysterious blonde boy that walked away. Elsewhere. Council chambers. Sarutobi sat in his seat as the Konoha Council was currently discussing what they should do concerning the approaching Chunin exams arriving this year. The old man was listening to the shinobi's take on what to do for the proctor selection, while the civilians talked about festivities and all that other nonsense. More would have been said had the sounds of scuffling not been heard outside and the doors burst off its hinges and landed in the center of the room. The councilman then looked up to find the form of Naruto walking into the room with his cold calculating eyes. Which one of you is the head of the Hyuga clan? He asked before looking around and locked eyes with the only one with all wide eyes. Said man looked in shock as Naruto looked at him as if he was peering through his soul. Are you the head of the Hyuga clan? He asked with the man nodding his head, although everyone was wondering exactly what the blonde was doing here. Yes, I am. What is it that you wish to discuss to me? He said with Naruto's eyes giving a colder feeling than before. It's come to my attention that your daughter has a bit of a problem in gaining strength. Would you like to know of a way to better her strength? He asked the man, who was taken aback by the stare the blonde boy was giving him. It was almost as if the boy held the eyes of God, the one being that could judge all those before him. Yes. I want my daughter to grow in strength, but she doesn't seem to be able to do it. What is it that you know will help her? He asked in a respectful tone. Your treatment of your daughter, Hyuga Hinata. He said with the man scowling at the boy. And what is it that gets you involved in family affairs? He said with his eyes becoming the Byakugan in a flash. To most, this would intimidate them to the point where they would crap themselves. However, Naruto responded without missing a beat and simply increased the intensity in his eyes. It gets me involved when a coward uses his own fears against his offspring. He said with the man blowing a casket and stood on his feet. How dare you call me a coward and tell me how to be a father, just who the hell do you think you are? He said with his voice raising in volume while the others watched on in wonder. Whoever this kid was, he knew how to handle the presence of one of the Leaf's strongest shinobi. Naruto's eyes then turned into a glare as he slowly started to leak killing intent. I'm the guy that doesn't take too kindly to cowards, that hides behind his problems and takes his emotions out on his child. I can see the way your aura consistent shifts when you think on your daughter. You wonder if you are doing the right thing. You wonder if your way truly is the right way for her growth. Do you know what I see in that girl? A person that can truly make the Hyuga clan stronger than ever, yet her spineless father is too much of a coward to truly help her. Shut up. I am the one who will make Hinata stronger. Not some blonde-haired gaki from a clan of nobodies. Hiashi spat out. Naruto was now snarling in anger as steam began to escape his mouth. You will not speak of master that way, you coward. He was 5 times the father than you will ever be. He said with Hiashi finally losing it. He felt his pride get injured by that and needed to make an example. He charged at Naruto with an open palm ready to strike the blonde boy, who simply stood still with his hands near one of his sheathed swords. When Hiashi neared him, Naruto quickly drew his sword and slashed near the Hyuga head's right collarbone. Naruto quickly sheathed his sword before turned to find Hiashi screaming in pain and grabbing his shoulder blade. Naruto then walked over to the man, who glared at him and sent his left arm at Naruto's chest, only to be shocked when the boy grabbed his arm and shoved his boot into the man's chest. Look at you Hyuga, so arrogant in your bloodline and your clan itself that you failed to notice the weakness of your very style. The Gyuukin style is made to the assumption that the user's enemies is weaker, along with their moves being precise. If the user so much as flares an emotion, then the style becomes useless and the user is in trouble. As I just showed you that I know the weakness of your style, however you can improve it as long as you change your attitude. He said before he did some seals and held his hand over the man's wound. Hiashi watched as green chakra appeared in the boy's hand before seeing the wound inflicted on him vanish. The man looked on in confusion before Naruto spoke. I can see it in your eyes Hyuga-san, the desire to help your daughter succeed in life and the love you have for her in your cold heart. You can do it Hyuga-san, but you must change the field for the seed to turn into a beautiful flower. He said as he stood up and prepared to take his leave but was stopped by the voice of one Inyazuka Tsume. Wait boy, what is your name? She asked with Naruto pausing for a moment before he spoke. Uzumaki Naruto. He said with everyone gasping at that before the eyes narrowed at him, though only one had the balls to show it. You damn dirty demon. How dare you return to the village after you abandoned us? Said a civilian council member with Naruto looking his way, his cold eyes making him feel like his legs were possessed by spirits and couldn't stop shaking. I was 6 years old dipshit, plus doesn't abandonment mean that I was needed at the time and left without even so much as a notice? He asked with a man snarling at that smartest remark before he continued on. You could have spilled our secrets to another village that is plotting to destroy us, he said with Naruto still looking him in the eye. What you are trying to imply is that I could have told someone like Kumo the number of shinobi, level of defenses, village structure, and weak points that are so juicy that they would believe a 6-year-old civilian. Does that sound like something any smart leader would do? He said with the same man scowling at him and would have continued his banter had a shinobi councilman not raised his hand to silence him. You have quite the knowledge of shinobi villages at such a young age Naruto-san, can you please explain how you know it? Abiram Shibi said with Naruto answering the man that Naruto identified as an Abiram. I was taken in by my master when I left the village 6 years ago. Under his tutelage I've seen many things and learned many things from that man, things that only I may know. He said looking at one man that was ready to say something but held it in when he saw the boy's eye. Naruto-san, what exactly is the reason for your return now? Narashikaku asked since he was curious about this boy and could feel the power come off of him in waves. I'm not exactly sure honestly. All I know is that I was brought back here to fulfill something that I need to accomplish. He said with everyone looking surprised. One man in particular that was wrapped in bandages simply snarled at the boy before he spoke. I have one question for the brat, who was this master of yours? He asked with Naruto scowling at him but saw that it didn't faze him at all. Naruto immediately felt some respect for the man fell up inside so choice to answer the question, but not what he wanted. It's none of your concern, he died 2 years ago. He said but one woman wasn't willing to allow him to let it go unanswered. No brat, you answer the question since you have no other choice before this council. The woman, Haruno Makira, said with Naruto looking her way and saw the woman back off. Just as I thought. All of you Haruno women like to bark but never bite. No wonder you all have a reputation for being whores. He said with Makira giving an instant reaction. Who are you calling a whore? I am a clan head amongst this council, your superior, and you will show respect to someone as esteemed as myself. Like the guy that stuck you and gave you your stupid slut daughter. He said with Makira ready to blow a fuse before she was interrupted by Danzo once more. Tell us of your teacher since he appeared to have given you something that most people would never have. He said with Naruto looking towards Sarutobi for a moment. When the old man nodded, the boy turned his head towards the bandage man and said his name. My sensei was the war dragon. Matsukani Slayer. He said with everyone gasping in pure shock. Makira, who was once ready to blow a fuse, felt her anger leave and was replaced by fear. Why you may and to sa say th at man www as sss your, the woman with pink hair on the civilian council stuttered out. That's right, my sensei was a member of the Four Horsemen with me being his successor. Naruto said coldly sheathing his blade. All of you remember this and remember it good. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. The War Angel and I won't be taking anything other than respect. If you want respect from me, then you must earn it. And if not then death will only be a privilege once I'm done with you. Naruto said before he walked out of the room. Sarutobi looked around and saw that everyone was stunned by what just transpired. Well then, I guess that meeting is over. Hiruzen said before he left the room as well. Now let's get it on. Naruto sat within an open field near the outskirts of the village with his arms behind the back of his head. He's been here for at least 20 hours and already he was bored out of his mind. He wished that he rethink the idea of returning so soon, as the world outside these walls was where the real action was. A world of death, misery, pain, and triumph, his kind of world. The blonde's thought continued on the subject till a familiar voice spoke to him. Hit, how's the day been so far? The voice asked, which Naruto identified as Kyuubi's. It's been shit Kyu, almost makes me wanna throw up. He thought with the fox laughing a little before he spoke. I bet you wish you were back in snow country with Koyuki huh? Oh yes I do. It's been a while since I gotten off a little steam. Naruto responded knowing exactly what Kyuubi was implying. His master taught him a long time ago on how to control the urges for sexual activity since they start sometime around 12 to 13-year-olds. He has been feeling the call ever since that day, but luckily he could control the urges for as long as he could until the time came when they needed to be released onto a willing participant, namely Koyuki. The bad kid, you got quite the girl and she's not even a shinobi. Kyuubi said with Naruto nodding. Well after all that training I put her through, she better be at least able to fight me for 3 minutes. Naruto thought before he got up and walked up a tree. He then laid back on the tree and closed his eyes, allowing the blissful sleep to take over, but still had his guard up. He learned if not remembered that you trust no one in the nighttime, be it an enemy or a comrade. Besides, it wasn't like anybody would try to come after him tonight knowing that his identity was hidden for now. The next day, the blonde awoke from his slumber as he sensed the arrival of Kakashi. The blonde jumped from the tree and walked towards the two genin, who were surprised by the appearance of the blonde boy. They were about to ask him a question, but were interrupted by the appearance of Kakashi, as he appeared in a puff of smoke. Yo was all he said with his hand waving towards his team. You're late. Sakura screamed, forgetting that Sasuke was like 2 feet from her, so he grabbed his head as the ringing went through his ear. Naruto simply remained in his position before shaking his head and stood before his teacher, along with Sakura and Sasuke standing beside him, although they kept their distance after what happened yesterday. I'm well aware of that Sakura, thank you. He said with a hidden smile behind his mask. Now then today we shall be working on your survival training. He said with Sakura groaning, Sasuke's natural-born scowl intensifying to higher limits, while Naruto he just stood where he was. Not a single emotion playing across face. But we already did that in the academy. Why do we have to do it again? She said with Kakashi eye smiling at her. Yes, you have done this in the academy, but this is of a different kind. He said as he took out 2 gold bells attached to a thin piece of string. Your test is to capture these 2 bells from me. He then took out a timer and said of a stump you have until noon to do it. Those that capture a bell will get to eat these 2 lunches I've prepared, while the one that doesn't will watch while being attached to that stump. He said with a mention of food causing Sasuke and Sakura's stomachs growling, while Naruto simply looked on with boredom. Also what will happen is that those who don't get a bell shall be sent back to the academy for another year's worth of training. He said with Sakura looking horrified at that as that would make her chances of being near Sasuke all the more harder than what she currently had. But there are only 2 bells and 3 of us, how can we all pass? She said with the man chuckling. That's exactly the point. He said with Sakura looking more confused than before. Remember to come at me with the intent to kill, or else you'll only result in failure. He said with Sakura looking a little horrified at that. But sensei, aren't you afraid that you'll get hurt? She asked since she didn't want her Sasuke-kun to hurt him. Naruto on the other hand had to hold back a laugh he knew would come out. This girl obviously was too stupid to even realize that she was the weakest person to walk this village, yet she thought she could win. Okay then, as I said you have until noon to get your hold on the bells begin. He said with Sasuke and Sakura vanishing in sight, but Naruto remained in his spot. Kakashi was surprised by the blonde's move and wondered just what was he planning. Naruto then walked up to the masked man and removed his kimono top and jacket, revealing his black muscle shirt that was tied around his upper body. Naruto then took off the obi sash around his waist and allowed the belt to fall before he gripped his shoulders and stretched his arms before looking the man in the eye. I want to see if you are worthy of your title. Naruto said with Kakashi smirking behind his mask as he looked on with an eye smile. Oh don't worry about that, for you won't land a single punch on me. He said before he wound up regretting his words as Naruto appeared before him with his arm cocked back. Kakashi had only a tenth of a second to raise his arm as Naruto's fist slammed into it. Naruto then slid his hand along the tall man's arm and landed on the grass and sent an upside down kick to Kakashi's stomach region. The copy ninja jumped into the air and backflipped towards the edge of the lake behind him. He watched as the blonde did a few more spins on his right hand before he landed on all fours, resembling the Inyazuka clan's all fours jutsu. The blonde boy snarled at the man before he stood up and flashed through a couple of seals before calling out fire release. Immortal Phoenix Flame Missile and unleashed his fire technique towards Kakashi, who stood shocked at that. Those hand signs, he went through them so fast that even I couldn't see them. He thought before seeing the flames turn into a phoenix and charged for him. The silver-haired Jounin quickly jumped away from the phoenix as it crashed into the water behind him. Before the man even got a chance to breathe, Naruto was back on him, sending a palm thrust into Kakashi's chest. The man screamed in pain before Naruto continued on the offensive. The blonde sent a forward strike to Kakashi's face, the masked man blocked with an open palm and sent an elbow into Naruto's face, only to see the boy turn into a puff of smoke. Shadow clones. He thought before he turned to find Naruto charging at him with his right arm held back. Naruto sent the fist forward, which Kakashi dodged by doing a flip over it and landed behind the boy. He then sought as shock the boy stop his charge before performing a backflip of his own and nailed the masked man right in his head. Kakashi staggered back for a moment before he stepped in the wrong spot. It was then that 5 clones of Naruto appeared before the masked man with swords drawn and held in different positions. One had his blade near Kakashi's jugular vein, another had it near Kakashi's kidney area, a third had his near Kakashi's stomach, the next had it near the man's spinal cord, and the last held his in a stabbing position in front of his heart. Kakashi couldn't help but say it, he was impressed by the boy's skill. Well done Naruto, it appears that you truly are strong. He said before the clones released their hold on the boy and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Kakashi then called the other 2 genin to their spot, which they did without a moment to waste. Well it appears that you two fail. Kakashi said as he reached for the bells on his hip but saw that they were gone. Looking for these Kakashi? Naruto said with the bells jingling in his hand. How did you? Funny thing about the wind element, it moves in so many ways yet when in the hands of its master nothing is impossible. Not even making a small wind blade that is virtually invisible to the naked eye and even more so to the chakra sense. He said pointing to the small cut on Kakashi's pant leg. The masked man looked down and saw to his amazement that there was indeed a small cut on his pants. He must have done it during the lecture and grabbed them while he was fighting me. Truly amazing. He thought before seeing the boy toss the 2 bells to the genin behind him. Now I'm sure you knew what the next part is. I may not particularly like them, but they are useful for the moment, so might as well use the opportunity. Naruto said with Kakashi looking shocked before he shrugged his shoulders. Well then I guess you 3 pass. He said with Sasuke and Sakura looking shocked by that. But sensei, Sasuke-kun and I didn't do anything, so how do we pass? She asked as all she did was take the bell that sadly neither she nor her Sasuke-kun earned because Naruto showed teamwork by fighting me and allowing you 2 to be safe, then passing the object of the mission to his teammates to make sure that it's secure. In this case all he had to do was say that he fought for you and got your bells for you so that you could be strong enough to defend yourself. It shows that Naruto is worthy of being the second leader of this group when I'm not here. He said with Sakura looking surprised before she spoke up. But sensei, wouldn't Sasuke-kun be a better team leader? I mean he is an Uchiha and he is the strongest member on this team. She said with Naruto and Kakashi sweat dropping. They were wondering if her mother got drunk while she was pregnant with her, as she had to be the dumbest bitch on the planet to think that. Although Naruto was the only one with the balls to say it aloud. I don't know what's more pathetic, you or the fact that you're regarded as the smart person that graduated and that your slut mother actually gave birth to you, Naruto said to Sakura, which caused the girl to blow her stack and respond. Shut up Naruto, just what do you know? It's not like you can do better than Sasuke or me, you just caught sensei off his game that's all. And don't you ever call my mother a slut again or else I'll hurt you so bad you'll beg Sasuke to stop me. She said before seeing Naruto turn his gaze onto her, his eyes telling many stories to the girl that quickly made her regret saying anything to the boy. You truly believe that shit huh? You like to think that you are stronger than me or that your precious Sasuke can do everything as if he was God himself, yet what has either of you done to show it? I on the other hand have seen things, done things, and gone through things that would make you two little kitties wet your beds. You are the last person to talk as if you can do something, as quite frankly you couldn't even be able to beat a monkey with Down syndrome and terminal cancer. He said with the girl gasping and looked to be on the verge of tears with Naruto scowling, obviously showing no form of sympathy to the pink-haired girl. This girl was weak and if she wanted to be a shinobi then she would have to grow up from her little fantasy world. Just like all you Haruno sluts, you all want to bark up a big game, but when the chips are down, you want to cry to a man to support you. No wonder you all have a reputation that you proudly uphold to this day. He said with Sakura's tears flowing more, but her emotions continued to show. Shut up, I'm not a slut and I won't let you talk about my family like that. She said while hoping to knock some form of chivalry into the blonde boy. However, Naruto had different intentions in mind, since this girl was in need of a reality dose and quick. Oh yes you are, just like that whore you call a mother. Your whole clan is made of nothing but former prostitutes and pimps, but none are more famous than your mother. She probably got stuck more times than the Uchiha's father with men, Sasuke growled at that, but deep down knew it was true. In fact, I would not be surprised if you are the result of that whore's actions. Just think about it, the Haruno clan, holder of the slut cycle, one whore gives birth to a future slut. He said with the girl losing her cool and charged at the blonde boy. She would have tried to punch him had Kakashi not stepped in front of her and grabbed her extended arm. He then shook his head to tell her to stop, which she did, but the tears wouldn't stop coming out. Kakashi then sent a glare at the blonde, who responded with one of his own. Naruto, you went too far this time. He said with Naruto looking at the man with a glare that caused the Shinigami to shit himself if given the chance. Look Haddock, I don't let children think that they can play an adult game with childish ideals. If she wants to prove me wrong about what I know about her clan, then she will have to earn my respect. However, until then I will not stop and call her whatever I want to call her. He said before sparing one more glance at the still crying Sakura, who looked his way only to find a sneer come her way. Pathetic whore. Naruto said before he vanished in a whirl of feathers. That last comment set her off the edge and caused her to bawl her eyes out on Hokage's office. Within the office of the Sandaime Hokage several shinobi could be seen standing around the Sandaime's desk. Each of the shinobi were of Jounin rank as well, while one, Yumino Iruka was a mere Chunin. The reason for the gathering of powerful shinobi was to reveal which of them if any had passed their team. Now then we will begin this meeting beginning with the Jounin for Team 1. Team 1 fails. Stated one of the Jounin with a senbon in his mouth before he stepped back. Team 2 fails. Said another who coughed before stepping back. Team 3 fails. Team 4 fails. Team 5 fails. Team 6 fails said a female with short purple hair and brown eyes. All eyes then went towards the next person in line, who cursed at that. He knew that his reputation would take a hit as soon as the words left his mouth. Team 7 passes. Kakashi said with the results being instantaneous as everything came to a halt with all eyes turned to the silver-haired Jounin in wonder. Kakashi sighed as he knew that this was coming after he passed the team. He has long since built up a reputation as a hard ass, failing every team he got and this time he actually passed one. Somewhere deep inside, the man knew that this was never going to leave him. Must have been because of the A.G.E. Stated one of the previous Jounin. Sarutobi silenced this man with a glare before motioning to the next person to speak up. Team 8 passes. Stated Kurenai before stepping back. Team 10 passes. Stated Asuma finishing things off. Sarutobi Hiruzen then nodded as he checked off the 3 teams that passed. Once that was done, he dismissed the ones that no longer held teams under them and kept the new senseis to this new generation of rookies. Now then, this part is supposed to be the briefing of how your teams did during your exams and that way I'll have a better understanding of where they currently are. He said with another sheet of paper in hand before he pointed to his son. The man nodded before he stepped up to address his father. My team passed on a good standing. All 3 of them didn't exactly see eye to eye at first, but today they were completely different than normal. Shikamaru would normally act lazy and ignore the drill, but today he was a strategic mastermind, helping Ino and Choji set me up and get me to surrender the test to them. Choji also acted differently than normal, as he didn't even bother trying to eat his snacks, only focused on the test and the test alone. Ino however was a light that shined in the dark as she acted as a decisive leader and guided the team throughout the test. For some reason, they all had a fire that awoken in them yesterday after few choice words from Naruto-san. He finished with the others shocked by that. Hiruzen then nodded his head before pointing towards Kurenai. My team passed on good standings as well. They acted in a unit with even Kiba listening to them and Shino giving a larger helping hand in the test. Kiba is too used to using his dog partner in everything he does, but that is not a negative about him. He was still able to fight with seriousness that I never thought existed in him. Apparently, after getting his ass handed to him yesterday, he snapped out of his arrogance and fought without his arrogance showing. Shino proved to be the leader of the team as he was able to create a strategy to help catch me off guard and accomplish the goal I placed for them. Hinata also did well, but she surprised me today when she came with a smile on her face and said Toussaint apologized to me and promised to do better. It appears that whatever Naruto-san did must have knocked some sense into that man's head. Kurenai said with everyone once again looking shocked, although Hiruzen simply smirked at that, having seen the reason firsthand. Last came Kakashi, who already stepped up and spoke. My team passed, but only one of them is truly ready to be a ninja. Naruto did all the work, all the fighting, and was the only person that took the meaning of the exam to heart and utilized it to the fullest. Sasuke and Sakura just sat in the trees and watched as Naruto fought me and captured the bells all on his own. The kid then gave them the bells since he knew that he had to do it, but I could tell that he didn't want to do it at all. He finished with everyone looking at the man in shock. It appears that Naruto-kun has been taught well over the last 7 years. He said with the 3 jounin nodding their heads at that. Whoever taught him was also able to teach him how to properly use his words for motivation. Hokage-sama, where did Naruto go, or better yet who taught him? Kakashi asked along with the other jounin nodding their head. I'm afraid that is for Naruto to tell you, as he made me promise that nobody outside of myself knows unless he says so. Sarutobi said with the 3 jounin nodding, but were now determined to find out for themselves. Kakashi simply because he wanted to know more about his student's past teacher, Asuma just out of pure respect for the boy, and Kurenai for the chance to learn of her clan. The old man then dismissed the 3 jounin before going back to his paperwork. Elsewhere, Naruto now sat on the roof of his new apartment building the Hokage gave him the keys to, although he planned to buy a bigger place once he found the right one. It was a good-sized 2-bedroom 1.5 bathroom, and in case you're wondering, a half bathroom is one without a shower, with a large open kitchen and living room area. There was also a balcony for the apartment seeing as it was on the 14th floor of the building, giving him a large view of the village. The boy knew that he could enjoy this place, but the power output of the shinobi here was making him sick to his stomach. However, it was not all too bad as he could get a kick out of being here for the moment. His thoughts were interrupted when he felt a familiar presence behind him. He prepared to grab one of his sword but decided against it when he smelt the scent in the air. I take it you're ready to learn of your clan, Kurenai-san? Naruto asked as he turned to face the woman, who gasped slightly before she shook it off. Naruto immediately noticed the sheathed sword in her hands and by the looks of things, it appeared to be a katana. Yes I am, if you will teach me, Naruto-san. She asked with Naruto standing to his feet with a small smirk on his face. Very well then, and drop the suffix as that is only for people who just met each other. You're now my student, so only call me by my name. He said before he took off with Kurenai following him closely, inwardly cheering as she was going to learn about her clan. Unknown area. Naruto landed in an open field large enough for the training he had planned with Kurenai now standing before him. The blonde then instructed her to sit down before he spoke. Now I'm not going to lie to you, Kurenai, for I will not go easy on you because you're a female. When I train someone, they better be 10 times more prepared for anything I dish out towards them. Do I have your word that you will follow all that I say and take my teachings to heart instead of just making me waste my time? He asked her with the black-haired woman nodding her head. Her face was all serious at this point, so Naruto could tell that she meant what she said. The boy then pulled out a blank piece of paper and tossed it to the woman, who looked at it in surprise before seeing the boy speak again. I want to see which elements you hold. The A.G.E clan was very famous for their power over fire and wind, so I need to see if you hold those 2 elements. He said with the woman nodding before pumping her chakra into the paper. Then, like she already knew, the paper burst into flames but then split in half, shocking her. Naruto smirked at that before he spoke. Looks like you'll be learning a lot more than just sword techniques. He said before he began his tale. Now then allow me to begin with the tale of your clan. The A.G.E clan was once one of the clans that stood amongst the legendary Yamei no Jusenkan, Order of 13 Swords, and were called the Phoenix Tamers. They always took their swords not as a way of fighting, but a way of having the ultimate companion that they could trust with their lives. During the Grass Rain conflict, they fought with grass due to their standards of fighting besides one with honor. They were referred to as the warriors with a partner of flame as they literally fought while engulfed in a torrent of flames. The end result was a Megacure nearly losing most if not all of their forces and was forced to retreat that day to repair the damages done to their village and reproduce new shinobi to take the place of the massive hole that they were dealt with. Naruto said with Kurenai taking in this info while amazed by the power her clan once held. Naruto then continued, after that day it's unknown, but it said that they were attacked by an unknown assailant and were decimated by its destructive power. It was also said that none of them survived, but one could very well be out there to continue the legacy of their clan. That person will have to be you if you want their legacy to become as it was foretold. He said with a nodding her head. Naruto then got up along with Kurenai and drew his sword. Now then, I will start by teaching you how to use the basics of the style before moving on to the techniques. He said with Kurenai nodding before she drew her sword and copied Naruto's moves. Later on, Naruto now carried a tired out Yuhi Kurenai bridal style to his apartment. The woman did well for her first time holding a sword, although he was sure that she would need far more work than what he was giving her. He determined that she never truly trained her body like she should have, as her reflexes and speed were anything but novice level, so he would have to buy her some weights and train her more on the basics before he moved on. As Kurenai held onto his neck, the blonde boy couldn't help but like the way she was sleeping soundly and had to say that it was cute, but he quickly took those thoughts from his head and landed on the balcony of his apartment. He opened the balcony door and walked her into his room since he decided to use the guest bedroom as a storage room but didn't mind giving the black-haired woman his bed for the night. As he walked into the room, he laid the woman down on his bed and placed the covers over her before walking out of the room until Kurenai began to stir and look around her area. What? Where am I? She asked with Naruto responding, you're at my place for the night. You did well today, but tomorrow we will be upping the ante a bit. He said with Kurenai looking at him for a moment, but where will you sleep? I can't take your bed like this. She said as she would have either gotten out of the bed or at least offered to share it with him. Whoa, where did that come from? She asked herself but didn't digress from the point. It's alright Kurenai, for it wouldn't feel right to make you walk home after all that you've went through today. Just go to sleep, I'll be fine. He said before leaving the room and Kurenai placing her head back on the pillows. Good night then. She said before falling asleep. The next day, the black-haired woman awoke with a loud yawn and looked around to find that she was still in the same place as before, meaning that it wasn't a dream. She got out of the bed and decided to look around the bedroom for a moment. She saw that the boy wasn't big on decoration, as the only thing about his room that stood out was the comfortable queen-sized bed with a dresser and mirror on the front. The rest of the room was covered in nothing but seals and formulas that she didn't get one bit. She then walked over to his closet and opened the door, only to find that the boy also wasn't one for clothing either, as he only had 2 kimonos in the closet. One she knew was meant to be worn in battle, and the other was more of a dressy type. She had to say that he did have a taste for design, as the kimono was a beautiful mixture of black and red with a full white moon on the back, along with a small red fox, with 9 tails curled under it and a swirl pattern on the moon. Her thoughts on the outfit were interrupted when a smell reached her nose. She walked out of the room and towards the kitchen where she found Naruto making breakfast, but that wasn't what caught her attention. What did was his current attire of only black boxer shorts, exposing his muscled and scared upper body to her. She also saw that the boy had twin tattoo sleeves on his arms going all the way down to his wrist and another on his back that looked like some kind of seal. I take it that you're enjoying the sight. Naruto said before looking to Kurenai's direction and saw that the woman was currently blushing up a storm. He then placed the food on the plates and set it on the counter connecting the rooms, which gave Kurenai a view of another tattoo of a 6-point star on his chest. Come on and get it, I know you're hungry. He said before going into his fridge for a drink. Kurenai didn't need to be told twice, as her stomach growled loudly before she walked over to the plate he set for her. She then saw him place a glass on her table and fill it with some orange juice, before putting some in his own cup, then throwing it out of the balcony since it was empty. Why did you do that, Naruto? She asked while eating the food, which she had to say was very good. She then looked up to find the boy also eating the food with a shrug. That's how I roll, Kurenai. He said before getting back to his food. Kurenai then asked her next question that was on her mind. Naruto, why is it that you have so many tattoos? I never seen so many on anybody, much less a 13-year-old. She asked with Naruto beginning to stir his food a little before he spoke. These are something that I've gained along my time training. I can't exactly go into detail of these as I haven't known you long enough to divulge my secrets with you. But I do hope for the day to come when I do tell you. He said, surprised at himself for saying that, but chalked it up as a small impulse of flirting to a pretty woman. Said pretty woman wasn't sure, but if she had to guess she would say that he kinda flirted with her on that part. She decided to take it to a different direction or else she would be losing a chance to get stronger. Do you have any other clothes to wear besides those kimonos? She asked with Naruto stopping before he spoke. No. I don't like carrying more than one outfit to fight in, it will take less time to get it clean than to clean an entire closet worth of clothes. He said before he finished his breakfast and saw that Kurenai finished hers. So like a gentleman, he took her plate and cleaned it in his sink while Kurenai continued to drink her orange juice before she spoke again. Well, we need to change that, Naruto. If you want, I could show you around the village and maybe help you find some clothes or something," she said while inwardly hoping he would say yes, but why she would never know. Naruto on the other hand was confused by that, as he was pretty sure that the woman just asked him out. He would feel the need to turn it down and get to training, but maybe he should venture into this. "I guess I can't since I got nothing better to do," he said with Kurenai nodding. "What else could you do today?" she asked out of curiosity. "Go train with my team," Naruto said before creating a shadow clone. "Go to the team meeting and disperse yourself once it's all over. Haddock is going to be late again, so don't get there early and by all means don't talk to the two weaklings, they aren't worth your time," he said with the clone nodding and hopped out of the apartment. Naruto then walked over to his room to get changed while Kurenai silently watched. 2 hours later, Naruto was now walking through the forest area, still trying to find house to live in. He just finished shopping with Kurenai and together they bought a lot of stuff. They hit about 5 stores today and each one they left with a lot of stuff for both Naruto and Kurini. They each bought a total of 20 black, blue, red, and white t-shirts, 20 black, blue, and brown pants, and a few jackets to go with each outfit. Naruto made a complaint that these were not clothes meant for a fight, but Kurenai reassured him that they were simple casual clothing that he would need so he would not stand out in front of everyone. He also noticed something as they walked down the street as they received a lot of looks going towards them in confusion and curiosity. Kurenai felt a bit embarrassed as she heard some civilians claiming that she was dating someone younger than her, although she was sure that she would like it. Naruto did know that the time would come when he would have to change his battle outfit, seeing as how he has been wearing the same one for well over 3 years and not a single change came to it. Once he settled down with all this stuff then he would go find some new battle clothes, but at the moment the boy's attention was on Kurenai. Once he dropped her off to her apartment, he settled out on his quest to find a new home around the area. The apartment only held a 6-month lease on it, so he needed to find a property and purchase it fast. Unknown to many people, Naruto was also a former mercenary and gained quite the image amongst the black market and the underground shinobi world. There he was referred to as many things, the Black Seed, the Shadow Striker, or his personal favorite the Angel of Death. But Naruto wouldn't pay that much thought as he made quite the fortune in assassinations and working under the rulers of the villages he visited. He also gained a large number of hearts in the form of princesses when he saved them from kidnapping attempts or from being held captive. One was even bold enough to kiss him for what he's done, while the others would blush at his appearance. However, no matter how pretty they were, and some were just flat out gorgeous in his eyes, he would only be with someone that could fight. His danger senses went off as he hopped backwards from his position. Barely a second later a large explosion came in front of him, which caused the boy to sigh deeply at his ordeal. He needed to stop thinking and walking at the same time, it caused him to slightly lower his guard. When he looked up from the smoke clearing he saw a man standing with his fist on the ground. He then saw 3 more genin appear behind him, with one looking just like the man before him. "That wasn't bad, youthful one, your attention was off yet you were still able to dodge my punch," the man said with his large eyebrows looking into his eyes. "Who are you? I never seen you before," he asked with the man smiling at him and doing a weird pose. "My name is A.G.E. These 3 behind me are my genin squad, Rock Lee, Tenshin Teneton, and Hyuga A.G.E. What would your name be, youthful one?" he asked with Naruto responding. "Uzumaki Naruto," he said with A.G.E looking confused. "I heard your name before, Naruto-san, but that was years ago. What happened to you that would cause your unyouthful departure?" he asked with the other genin listening to him intently. "I've been around the elemental countries with my former master. I trained under his tutelage for the past 5 years before he died, but I didn't let that stop me from becoming what I am today," he said with Guy and Lee looking at him with tears in their eyes. Tenten was simply eyeballing his swords like fat guy in a meat buffet. A.G.E however chose to examine the boy with his Byakugan and was surprised by what he saw. "Your chakra levels are beyond what should be the normal standard for a genin, how were you able to obtain such levels of chakra?" he asked with Naruto looking at him for a moment until he spoke. "That was due to all the hard work I put my body through and all the fights I experienced outside of the village, although I would have to say that you appear to be on edge with my presence," he said with the Hyuga prodigy looking surprised by that. "What do you mean exactly?" he said with Naruto walking up to him, his eyes looking very critical at the wide-eyed boy. "I mean that your aura speaks untold amounts of self-loathing and hatred and some of it mainly turned towards one person. If I had to guess, I would say that you blame someone for something that was out of their control," he said with A.G.E scowling at the boy. "And just what do you know? You don't know a single about me," A.G.E said, but Naruto kept his eye on him. "I see many things about you that even you don't know, and I also that you are strong on the outside but very weak on the inside," he said with A.G.E snarling before he brought his arm backwards to send a palm strike to Naruto's chest. "Shut up," he said sending the palm forward, only to be shocked when Naruto caught it and held it 3 centimeters from his chest area that held his heart. Naruto then released Neji and stared him down, with Neji starting to sweat nervously, but held his ground. You do know that when you send an attack towards another fighter it means that you wish to issue a challenge. Very well then I will accept it. Naruto said before sending a right fist to Neji's stomach, forcing the boy to double over in pain while being lifted 2 inches off the ground. Naruto then vanished and reappeared, executing a right kick to Neji's chest area, which connected and sent the boy flying towards the field. Tenten, Lee, and Guy were shocked by what just happened before seeing Naruto walk towards the area Neji currently resided. The boy coughed loudly to refill his lungs with air before looking to see Naruto walking towards him with his kimono off, thus revealing his black sleeveless shirt and exposed his tattooed arms. The wide-eyed boy scowled loudly before he charged at Naruto, intent on taking him out, but would soon learn why you never underestimate an opponent. He sent a forward palm at Naruto, who simply dodged to the right before sending another that was dodged again. He continued to send out palm strikes until Naruto got bored by this and decided to finally get involved in order to end this charade. Neji then sent a forward palm strike, which Naruto dodged once more, but this time had his arm held back. Naruto's fist then glowed a bright purple before he sent it forward, calling out Devil Fist. When Neji felt the punch hit him, it was as if he felt the speed of a freight train hitting him at 100 miles per hour. Neji soon felt his body soaring through the air before his back hit the ground and skidded along the grass before coming to a complete stop, his jaw hurting like a bitch. Naruto, seeing that the boy was slowly trying to get up, he prepared for his last move. Naruto then took a taijutsu stance, with his left arm forward in an open palm facing the ground and his right arm cocked back into his ribcage area. His legs were slightly spread apart and were bent a little like he was preparing for a small charge. Naruto then closed his eyes as he began to focus his energy into his right arm, preparing for one of his favorite taijutsu techniques. When Neji got up to his feet, Naruto's eyes snapped open and glowed a bright radiant blue before he spoke Sacred Dragon style. First technique, Dragon Scar. He called out before charged at the Hyuga prodigy with untold amounts of speed. When he neared Naruto, sent a right knee thrust into the boy's stomach and followed with a left. First, he said before following that with 3 quick left-right combo to the boy's stomach before sending an uppercut with his left arm. Call. He said again before he started to spin his arm in front of Neji's location, which started to show a flow of wind forming in that area. When Naruto felt it was enough, he sent his right arm through the ring, which acted and formed around the boy's arm before turning into the shape of a dragon death strike. Naruto said before sending it towards Neji's windpipe. Before it could reach the wide-eyed boy, he stopped mere inches from the other boy's neck, thus stopping the technique. The dragon then vanished from his arm along with the wind before he brought it down to find Neji looking him in the eye. Why did you stop your technique? He asked with Naruto not responding, only to do some quick seals before holding his right arm, causing some green chakra to form around his hand before placing it on Neji's arm. The boy began to feel the healing effects of the technique until all was gone and he was perfectly new again. Naruto then removed his hand and looked the Hyuga clan member dead in the eye. Because while most like to do they talking through their mouths, I like to do mine through my fist, and that speaks louder than what you can ever say. I can see that you have trained yourself hard all of your life, and I can also see that you're still suffering from a great lose you had over your life. I see massive potential in you, Neji, as much as I've seen in a few others within these walls, but you'll never go places with your current mindset. I can see that your time is coming when your skills will be recognized for all that they are worth, but if you want that day to come, then you would have to put your past where it belongs. He said with the Hyuga looking at him in disbelief before he felt something come his way. A smile, and it was not his regular fake one either, this was a true genuine smile. Thank you Naruto, I truly needed that. He said with Naruto smirking slightly. Behind them, the boys' teammates were beaming at this scene. Lee was practically shouting hallelujah to heaven, while Tenten simply smiled at the scene. Guy however was doing something totally different as he bared his shiny white teeth. Yosh. Your flames of youth burn brightly Naruto-kun. You have managed to make Neji-kun see the light. Guy shouted. Naruto then felt that he better give credit where credit was due, as he felt the pain from one of Neji's hit that managed to get him. No problem, although I would have to say that if you were to hit one of those strikes you would have won. He said with Neji's smile turning into shock. Really? But I barely got a hit on you. He said before seeing Naruto revealed his right arm, which had a red spot over his upper muscle area. Check again. If it wasn't for the quick dropping of weight at the last minute, I would have been taken out by you. He said with the boy smirking at the acknowledgement he received. He then saw his team get closer to him to ask questions that he knew were coming. Naruto-san, those were impressive techniques, can you tell us what they were? Lee asked with Naruto nodding. The techniques I used is a personal technique I invented, and the second is part of my taijutsu style called the Sacred Dragon style. He said with Lee looking shocked by that. Tenten then took the next opportunity to ask a question. How did you create such a technique? I never seen anything like that before. she said before Naruto smirked her way. It's rather easy to be honest with you. I've created a lot of technique in my time out of the village, though they all range around elemental technique and a few on chakra alone like the devil fist. I've recently finished a new instant lightning technique that can work with anyone that has a lightning affinity. He said before stepping up to demonstrate, already knowing that they would like to see it. He quickly breathed in some air before holding out his arms at shoulder length and width. He then held out his index and middle fingers on both hands before he began the process. He brought his right arm down slowly, which showed an electrical charge following his fingers, before he held them up near his head. He then repeated the process with left arm with the same effects occurring. Naruto then brought his fingers together near his waist area, allowing the two static energies to meet, before sending his right arm forward, calling out lightning release. Static edge. As he called the name of the technique out, the lightning left his fingers and flew towards a tree. When the lightning hit the tree, it exploded into flames, and before it sent tiny chunks of bark around the area. Naruto then doused the flames with a small water jutsu, before looking at the group of four behind him, staring at the destruction with their mouths agape. The point of the technique is not the power it holds, but the effectiveness of surprise that it utilizes. When in the hands of a skilled lightning master, he could do far more with this technique than I could. Naruto said before everyone clapped in appreciation for showing them the technique. Tenten then walked up to him and was finding her curiosity of the boy increasing moment by moment. Are you skilled with your swords, Naruto-san? Tenten asked with Naruto nodding. Do you know a kinjutsu style? She asked, hiding the desire to learn his style quite well. Naruto knew why she wanted to know, but felt that since she asked nicely he would explain. These swords are the legacy of my sensei. He invented them for me when I was 8 and from that day forth they haven't left my side. He said before pulling out his first blade. The others moved in for a closer look at the beautiful sword Naruto held. The sword was all white in its handle, guard, and blade that glowed a faint white hue. On the handle going down looked to be sapphire diamonds that glowed a radiant blue color. Naruto then pulled out his second sword and showed that it was the exact opposite from the other blade, as where the first blade was all white, the second was all black. I call these swords Phantom and Devil. While most would use the standard one-blade styles, I am use a two-blade style that is very rare amongst the shinobi world. While I know some one-bladed styles, I really prefer my personal two-bladed style. He said before he looked at all three of the genin before a smirk came to his face. In fact, I think I will be teaching all three of you some of those styles, as you all look to have potential in three of the ones that I know. He said with the genin looking shocked at that. You know more than one style? She asked with Naruto smirking. No true master in anything would stick to one style, as learning another would help in strengthening your own. He said before an Anbu wearing a cat mask poofed into existence. Naruto then turned his head to acknowledge the ANB, who had long purple hair that reached her back. Uzumaki-san, Hokage-sama requests your presence immediately. She said with Naruto nodding before he turned to Team 9. It looks like we'll have to take a rain check on this, however I will be seeing you guys soon. He said before he vanished in a swirl of feathers. Hokage's office. You called for me, Hokage-sama? Naruto asked with the old man sighing before tossing the blonde a scroll which he caught. Naruto looked at it in small confusion before seeing the old man speak up. That is a scroll left to you from your father. Hiruzen said, not needing to say any more than that. The blonde quickly opened the scroll and thoroughly read the words within it line for line. My son, Naruto, if you are reading this then you're either a chunin in rank or you were seen as strong enough before Sarutobi. This is by far the hardest thing that I ever had to do, but with the growing dangers becoming more and more likely to happen, this cannot be avoided. Trust me when I say this, my son, that this was the last thing I never wanted to do, but at the moment you're the best, and if not, the only choice I have. I am the one who sealed the Kyuubi no Yoko within you, your own father. I apologize for that to the bottom of my heart and I hope that you will come to forgive me someday. Now then allow me to introduce myself. I am Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. Your mother is known to the world as Uzumaki Kushina, the Scarlet Angel. We truly wish to be there, but I'm afraid that the technique I'm about to use will drain me of my life force and take away my soul. Your mother, however, is a different story as she, ink spots were over this section of the letter, but I'm sure that if she was there, that she would love you unconditionally. Sealed within the bottom of the scroll is the key to the apartment we shared while your mother was pregnant with you. Inside will be a scroll containing my personal techniques, information on your mother's clan, and your bloodline limit. Please know that no matter what you do in life, we support you throughout all that you do in the world. Make us proud, son, for we believe in you with all of our hearts. From your loving father, Namikaze Minato. P.S. If you come across a man with long white hair and wearing kabuki clothes along with a woman with blonde hair and extremely huge tits on her chest, tell them to quit messing around and get together already. It's been too fucking long. Naruto looked at the letter in shock before looking at the old man, who had a smirk on his face. Welcome back, Namikaze Naruto. Now let's get it on. Naruto sat on top of the Hokage mountain, but more specifically the Yondame's, his father. The boy just continued to stare into the scroll that his father left him for what felt like 3 hours, but in the reality was only about 20 minutes. In his hands were the only piece of his parents that he currently had, a scroll that only contained the words of what his father has written to him before his death. To make matters worse, he had no idea of what became of his mother, just an ink stain, covering what could possibly be the most important information he would ever read in his life. Naruto sighed again as he rolled the scroll up before placing it into his pouch and sat up from his position. He placed his hands in his pockets as he looked into the sky with a blank look on his face. Why sensei? Why do I feel this way? I could really use your guidance now. Naruto thought as his mind went over what became of his sensei and the day he became the War Angel. Flashback, Naruto sliced through another shinobi before stabbing one more through his eyes. The blonde then went through some quick seals before calling out fire release. Phoenix Storm. He then exhaled a torrent of fire towards a group of shinobi who was cremated by the strong flames. Satisfied with his victory, he quickly ran with his arms flailing and his swords in hand towards a hill to hide behind, along with his teacher and the other shinobi in the family. This was a force that they never faced before, as these were thousands of shinobis from almost all the shinobi nations against their small group of 300 warriors. However, they were prepared to die today and be forever remembered as the group of 300 that took down an almost unstoppable force. Slayer Sensei, they're arriving faster than they are dying. What are we going to do? Naruto said with the one-eyed looking at the boy for a moment before he spoke. Naruto, what was the first thing that I've ever taught you? He asked with the 11-year-old looking confused. You told me that a warrior never allows himself to quit in a fight. He said with the man smirking at him. Then are you ready to fight? He asked with Naruto nodding his head. Yes, I am sensei. He said before seeing Slayer walk up to him and gave him a hug, confusing the boy even further. Then you must continue the fight for us, the fight of keeping our memory alive. Slayer said with Naruto looking confused by that. What are you saying, sensei? He asked with Slayer bending down on one knee. You were the son I always wanted, Naruto, and I couldn't be more proud of you than I am now. You've grown stronger over the years and you'll grow even stronger throughout your lifetime, but sadly I won't be able to see what you become. He said with Naruto's looking confused by that before he realized what the man was saying to him. No sensei, please don't do this. You always taught me that a warrior never leaves his comrades to die. He said with Slayer nodding. Yes, but I also taught you that to live by the sword, you die by the sword. It's not your time yet, my boy. He said before he made some quick seals before placing his hand on Naruto's chest, causing the boy to feel intense heat on his chest. Naruto coughed loudly before he looked at his chest and saw the symbol for war appear on his chest before vanishing and turning into a 6-point star tattoo. Tomorrow morning, you shall be my full successor in the 4 horsemen. Tomorrow you, Uzumaki Naruto, will become the War Angel. He said before he hit Naruto on his neck, causing the boy to fall into unconsciousness. Slayer caught the boy and turned towards Maya, who nodded her head and took the blonde into her arms. She then smiled at the man for the last time. Thank you for all that you've done for me, Slayer-sama, I never forget you. She said as she gave him a hug. You were like a daughter to me, Maya, so survive as well. He said with the woman nodding before she fled the scene. Slayer watched his children leave before facing his army men. Tonight we all dine in hell. He said raising his arms with the men cheering before he charged at the approaching forces. The next day, Naruto got up from his rest and found that he wasn't in the battlefield anymore and was in an unknown room. He quickly massaged his neck before hearing the door open to reveal Maya walking in with a small smile on her face. Glad to see you're up, little brother. She said as she kissed him on the forehead but saw his face was down. He's gone, isn't he, sis? Naruto asked with Maya nodding her head. Yes, he died in the battle against those shinobi, but always remember that he'll never die as long as we keep him in our hearts. She said before placing her hand over his heart and her taking his and placing it over her heart. As long as we survive, we will never let our father die. She said before kissing his forehead again and left the room. Naruto then placed his tattooed arms behind his head and laid along the bed. I hope you're doing well, father. Then flashback. I guess it's about time I go find this place. He said before he stood up from his position on top of the Yondame's head. Naruto then stopped the flow his chakra to his feet, allowing him to freefall towards the ground below. Naruto then began to perform a barrel roll before he pushed his legs off the rock and was now floating above the village, his arms spread across him as if he was flying through the sky. The boy hung in the air for 3 more seconds before he vanished in the air. Elsewhere, Uji Kurenai was currently in the dango shop of the village, eating with her best friend of the village, Midarashi Anko. For many years these two have been friends, and while to most it may be confusing as to what the exact extent of their relationship was, but they simply chalked it up to being nothing but stupid thinking. So let me get this straight, you got a new year genin teaching you, a jounin, how to fight. Anko said before eating another dango. She didn't know why she loved this stuff the way she did, but it didn't truly matter as no matter what she would happily eat the dango. I know it sounds weird, but it's not as bad as you think. He's actually a great teacher and has even promised to teach me some of his ninjutsu down the road. She said, taking a bite from her plate. So you got a new boyfriend? She asked with Kurenai blushing at that, which caused Anko to turn her smirk into a grin. Tell the truth, Kuro-chan, you like him, don't you? She said with Kurenai pushing her fingers together. I don't know, maybe. I mean, I have been to his house already and saw what he is like behind closed doors, but he's completely out of my league. He's half my age, Anko. Kurenai said with Anko simply smiling at the woman she called her friend. Then I guess you wouldn't mind if I take him? Anko said only jokingly since she didn't really know who the guy was, but messing with Kurenai was fun, and this was a moment that she would take full advantage of. What? Kurenai said, surprisingly fast but caught herself and spoke again. I mean, what are you trying to say? She asked again with Anko's smirk still plastered on her face. I'm saying that would you mind if take him, since after all you don't want him? She said with Kurenai getting ready to answer before they were interrupted by a swirl of feathers and there stood Naruto. Kurenai, I need your help with something. Naruto said with the purple-haired woman looking at him in astonishment. That's Kurenai's man. He looks like he can level this whole village with his bare hands. I think I will take him. She thought as she watched Kurenai snap into reality and answered the boy. Oh. Yes, Naruto-san, what do you need? She said but cursed inwardly for saying san with his name again. 2 things, the first is that I told you stop the use the suffix with my name while I'm training you. Second is that I need your help finding this address. Naruto said before Kurenai nodded and walked over to the boy and took the address from his hand. Oh, that's not too far from here. You want I can go with you and help you find it? Kurenai said with Naruto nodding. Very well then. He said before seeing Anko appear beside Kurenai with a smirk on her face. Hey Kuro-chan, have you forgotten your manners too? Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend? Anko said stressing the word friend but couldn't help but look at the boy before her. My name is my name is Namikaze Naruto. The boy said with Anko's eyes widening slightly before she spoke. My name's Mitarashi Anko, nice to meet you kid. Anko said with Naruto staring at her for a moment before a smirk came to his face. The Mitarashi Anko, the princess of snakes. Naruto asked with the woman looking a little confused before she spoke. Yeah, that's me, what do you want, an autograph? She asked with Naruto shaking his head. No, I just never thought I would see someone with a high clan background as Kurenai, but looks like I was wrong. He said with Anko looking confused. What do you mean? The only clan background that I have is that I was trained by the Snake Sannin. She said with Naruto giving her a confused look before he spoke. Do any of you know the background of your clans? He asked with his hand on his forehead before he looked at the purple-haired woman. Your clan was also famous among the elemental countries, being well known for their affinity to lightning and their lust for pleasure of the flesh with power beings, be it male or female. If you wish to learn more about your clan then come find me, Kurenai, let's go. He said with the black-haired woman nodding before looking at her friend, who had a smirk on her face. Oh yes Kurenai, you got yourself a good one. Don't think I won't be going after him. She said with Kurenai shook her head before she followed after the blonde boy, who surprising stood away from the location to wait for his black-haired student. 2 minutes elsewhere. As they walked down the street, Kurenai couldn't help but notice that he was looking very anxious about something. It was like this anxiety on his mind wouldn't cease until he went to where they were going. Feeling that she should ask, she asked the blonde boy what was wrong. Naruto, is everything okay? You seem very anxious than normal. She said with Naruto sighing. I apologize Kurenai, it's just that I got a startling letter today and I really need to find this place. He said with Kurenai seeing the boy tensing up slowly. What could this letter be that would make him act like this? What was in the letter Naruto? She asked. It was a letter from my biological father. That was all she wrote, as Kurenai saw that he wasn't in the mood to talk until they arrived to the place. So she kept quiet and guided him to the location that he was looking for. The rest of the trip was 5 minutes long until they stood before a locked door in front of a building that looked like it hasn't been lived in for years. Naruto then bit his thumb and caused blood to form around the wound before placing it over the seal in the letter. A puff of smoke came in the form of a small key that went into the lock and opened the door with ease. Naruto and Kurenai walked into the house and saw that it was big enough for a young couple starting out or one with a child on the way. Kurenai marveled at how clean the place was, since it was apparent that no one has ever lived here. The reason why it's so clean is because the person that lived here placed special chakra seals that covers the building with a sheet of chakra so that dust would disintegrate upon first contact. I'm actually surprised that it is still in effect after all this time. He said as he could already feel the miniature fluxes of chakra around the room. Naruto then set off to find the room that contained what he was looking for, while Kurenai marveled at the furniture in the room. The apartment was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom with a large living room with an open kitchen and a balcony. The living room was rather cozy with an L-shaped sofa and a recliner chair that middle-aged men referred to as the king's chair and a large television attached to the wall. The kitchen was your average-sized kitchen in an apartment building, but this one had an electric stove and oven. She also saw the paintings the room contained, and some of them were beautiful, while the others were humorous. She had to say that this was the kind of place a newlywed couple would get a kick out of having. "Naruto, this place belonged to your parents. They had exquisite tastes." She complimented him but didn't hear a sound of response coming from him. Feeling curious, she walked down the hall he walked down and saw that the 3 doors to the bedrooms was open wide. One room looked like a huge library with a light coming off the top of the ceiling, thanks to a light seal that you charge with chakra. She then saw that the master bedroom held a large queen-sized wardrobe with 2 dressers on the side and beautiful painting over it. She then looked towards the last door and saw that Naruto was currently sitting down and staring at an object in his hand. She walked up to his side and saw that it was a picture of a handsome blonde-haired man and a beautiful red-haired woman holding an adorable 1-week-old baby boy. Her eyes widened when she saw a tiny droplet of water on the frame and knew what this was. "Naruto, are these your parents?" she asked with Naruto nodding before turning to her, which caused her to gasp at the tear streak under his right eye. "Yes, these 2 are my parents Kurenai, Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Minato," he said with the woman gasping slightly before she felt something overcome her natural thinking. She bent down and took the picture out of his hands, causing him to look at her before feeling the red-eyed woman's embrace around his neck. Unknowingly, he placed his arms around her back and held her close as well. He didn't know how long they stayed like that, but as far as he knew, he liked being in the black-haired beauty's embrace. Later, Naruto sat in a lotus position with his eyes closed and the moonlight coming off of his prone from at the moment. He just finished Kurenai's training, and while the woman was currently resting in his place again, he wanted to get out and truly train for the first time in a while. As his eyes remained closed and his body relaxed, his shadow began to wiggle for a moment before it stretched about 2 feet away from the blonde and remained still. The shadow then began to spin on the ground until it just became a black whirlpool, which slowly began to sprout towards the sky until it formed a shape identical to Naruto, except his hair was white with extremely pale skin. The shadow Naruto chuckled before he looked at the true Naruto before him, who raised his head to look into the other's white and black eyes. "I take it that you're ready for a good spar," the shadow Naruto said as he got up from his seat and looked at his clone. "Always ready Kumori, although you should try to fight harder this time," Naruto said to Kumori, who laughed as he drew his copy of White Trick and Black Joker. "So it's like that, eh? Well then let's see which side is better, the light side or the dark side," he said as he charged at the blonde boy with his arms failing behind him. When he neared he hoped into the air with his swords above his head. "God's throne technique Twin Thunder," he said before sending his swords down. Naruto then drew both swords and held them in a reverse grip, blocking the sword attack. Naruto then spun around the shadow version of himself with his swords held under his arms. "God's throne technique / wave," he said sending both swords towards the other's back, which sent a chakra X towards the back of the clone. Kumori quickly turned around and held both swords in a reverse grip before slamming them onto the ground, calling out God's throne technique Grand Barrier, he said with a shield of chakra forming before him and blocking the chakra X. When Kumori let down the barrier, Naruto appeared before him with a sword strike from his left hand. Kumori blocked it easily and sent a second attack with his right. Naruto dodged a first strike for his head and blocked the close second, which came within a few inches of slashing his eyes out. Naruto quickly bent down and spun himself along the ground with his swords in hand, making him look like a fan on the ground. Kumori hopped away from the blonde's attack before seeing the boy hop into the air, before his spinning increased to the point where he looked like a drill, with his voice calling out God's throne technique Dragon Drill, he said before flying towards Kumori with his swords preparing to kill Kumori. The shadow version quickly summoned another barrier before jumping back as the barrier was shattered upon contact. Kumori landed on the ground as Naruto came out of his spin and landed on the ground with his feet skidding along the ground. The boy then stood up and sheathed both swords before looking at his clone. "The jutsu?" he asked with Kumori removing his kimono top and stepping into the sacred dragon style. "The jutsu?" Kumori replied with Naruto repeating the same thing and slipped into the same style. The 2 warriors looked at each for a moment before they charged at each other. Kumori hopped into the air and brought his right fist up before he slammed it on the ground, causing a crater to form. Naruto followed by performing a backwards front flip over Kumori before he landed on the ground and sent a kick towards Kumori's head. The shadow version blocked the kick and responded by grasping the leg and wrapping it under his arm before sending a right at Naruto's head. The blonde quickly hopped into the air and blocked the strike with his knee. The boy then bent himself back and placed his hands on the ground before using his legs to pull Kumori towards the ground head first. The shadow version let go before performing a front flip and landed on the ground before he spun around and sent a right to an expecting Naruto, who brought up his arms and blocked that attack. The blonde then sent another strike towards the clone of himself, which was blocked and responded to with another block and strike. The two warriors continued to trade blows with the other, never ceasing to gain the upper hand over the other. Kumori blocked another punch aimed at his lower leg and aimed a back heel kick to Naruto's skull, who brought up his arms to block. Kumori then grinned as he contracted his leg before spinning again and this time sent a forward kick jab to the boy's stomach before punching the boy with a wide left and sent him away with an uppercut. Naruto was lifted into the air and sailed over the air before his body jerked backwards with his fingers aimed at Kumori. Lightning release. Static edge. He said, sending the bolt of lightning at the clone, whose eyes widened before hopping back from the lightning bolt but wasn't far enough to dodge the aftershock of the attack. Kumori landed on his ass hard but was able to get up from the ground. But what he saw next surprised him as Naruto appeared before him sacred dragon style. First technique, Dragon Scar. Naruto called out, sending the familiar attack pattern before going into the final portion. He spun his hand in front of him, summoning the ring of wind before sending his fist through it, causing the dragon to form. Death Strike. Naruto shouted as his fist connected with Kumori's head and caused it to explode. His body then got down on its knees before disintegrating into shadows and being absorbed by Naruto, getting the last message his mind came up with. What the hell, man? I thought we were supposed to announce when we go into the next section. Sorry Kumori, that was just a desperate move on my part. Naruto said before he sat back on the tree with sweat glistening of his form. Kumori was getting more control of his body than Naruto had anticipated, but that was understandable since he was the shadow version of himself. It took Naruto a good amount of time to create that clone, as he was the fusion of all the clone techniques that he knew. He used the shadow clone technique as a base and the blood and spirit clones to do the rest, along with his own consciousness, thanks to Kyuubi's tips on modeling him within his mind. As such, Kumori was born and the shadow copy of himself was truly using his usefulness to the fullest. Kumori knew his fighting style, his technique, everything, thus making him the perfect training partner since, as the saying goes, the only person that can beat you is yourself. After resting up for a few more minutes, the boy picked up his kimono and ran out of the area to his apartment. He needed to get some rest for the night. 3 weeks later. 3 weeks passed after Naruto's return and things were getting heated in the terms of the blonde's assistance among the New Year rookies. Teams 8, 9 and 10 all requested his help amongst their training regimen. The teams knew that the one thing that they needed in terms of growth was understanding of power. They knew not what it was like to fight for real in the outside world amongst true shinobi, so they wanted to get as far ahead in the world as they could. The fist up was Team 10, who he decided to dub as Team Clan. Team Clan was a mixture of things that Naruto called the trifecta of failure, as Ino was weak, Shikamaru was slow, and Choji was skill-less. The boy immediately knew that the best way to improve this team was to have all three of them train the same way before they sectioned themselves in different directions. This resulted in Naruto buying the three of them training vest, wristbands, and leg bands, with each weight step about 3 times their normal weight. Once they were hit by the extra weight, they were floored into the ground hard. Naruto wasn't willing to let them rest, so he told them that they needed to work on their speed, endurance, and stamina before they get to the hard stuff. It took the team 4 hours just to get off the ground, then they had to run around the field, which took them longer than that to do it. Now, however, they could run at least 2 laps before feeling exhausted by the weight, telling the blonde-haired boy that they were doing well. Then came Naruto's next training subject, which was weaponry. Naruto already had a feeling that he knew what their elemental chakra were, so he bought Choji a warhammer, Shikamaru a naginata, and Ino a crossbow. The three were confused as to why the boy would give them a weapon to use, but felt that since he knew what he was doing, that they would trust him. Choji was an earth type regardless of what one might say, so he wanted the boy to practice in learning his element through his weapon. The weapon was the perfect weapon for an Earth Chakra Master, as that was the main weapon found amongst Iwagakure. Therefore, when Choji learned how to channel his chakra into his weapon, he was shocked when he caused a shockwave large enough to cause a small earthquake. Naruto commented that the boy held massive quantities of strength in him, so Earth Chakra was a natural given to him. Shikamaru was a possible wind type, as his personality was smooth and calm like the wind, but fierce when serious. He figured that the boy would soon learn the ways of utilizing his wind chakra to heights that only someone of his high-class IQ could create. Asuma figured that Naruto had elemental training prepared for them, but for now was just getting them started on basics. Ino was by far a fire type, as she held the personality needed for her to hold that element. Unlike everyone else, she was given the most training out of everyone due to the simple fact that she was the weakest link. He focused solely on teaching her archery for now, as that was her only option in terms of growth. She learned how to scope and map her targets and proper aiming techniques that Naruto gave her and was able to hit her target with 2 out of 5 arrows. She was taught how to use her. Naruto also gave her a secondary weapon, which was a short sword that she could use in case her long-distance fighting wasn't enough against an unknown opponent. The next ones up were Team 8, who he nicknamed Team Bloodline. Team Bloodline wasn't what you would call a quality team, as Shino held low chakra, Kiba was too weak, and Hinata was too timid. So he began by working on their negatives more than their positives, as that way when they worked with their positives, they would have less about them to call negative. The first thing he did was had to have them train without the use of their bloodlines or clan technique and see how far they went. Kiba was barely able to handle one day without his puppy, Shino was almost tempted to use his bugs during the session, and Hinata was slowly trying to resist the urge of activating her eyes. It was then that they realized why the boy did what he did, as they were too dependent on their bloodlines and not their own strengths. The blonde would then take that opportunity to train their personal skills and hope to get them at a certain level before this whole thing was said and done. As such, he bought them all weapons. For Shino it was a metal bow staff and a pair of nunchucks, for Kiba it was 2 tonfas, while Hinata received a sword. He picked the weapons strictly by their fighting types, as Shino was a more tactical fighter, Kiba was a more of a ferocious type, and Hinata was more of graceful type. Shino was more of the type of person to scope out a strategy before he would execute it with as much flawless precision as possible. So the bow staff would be of a grand help to him, as he had it specially designed for the boy to plant a minority of his bug colony into the staff so that more chakra can be produced. Naruto also figured that Shino was a earth type, but Naruto knew that it would be too early to teach him how to use his element. All Shino needed to focus on right now his staff. Kiba was a different story than the last time they met, as he appeared to have stopped being so arrogant that he would assume someone was weaker than him. As such, Naruto thought that the perfect weapon for the dog boy was the tonfas, as they required a ferocious fighter to take them to the next level. Naruto also predicted that the dog boy held the fire element, but the boy would first need to get the hand of his weapon before he would teach him how to use his element. Hinata was last but was his personal favorite, as the girl showed that she was different from when they first met. While she would still blush around him, her stutter was gone along with her timid nature, though she was still a little too shy. Naruto didn't allow that to faze him though, as he taught Hinata how to use her sword, which was a long double-edged sword with a pointed tip on the top. Naruto figured that the girl was a water type, so her natural movements would be smooth and calm like the waters. As such, the boy decided to train her further in the sword technique, since she was perfect for a style that could work for her before he moved onto her element. However, that wasn't all that they did together, as they talked as well. Flashback. Time with Hinata. Naruto watched Hinata practice using her new sword with the elegance and grace that she held in her body. Naruto saw that while her form wasn't perfect, it did show much improvement than when she first practiced with the sword. The Hyuga girl was also doing a bit of blushing, as Naruto would sometimes come by her and show her the proper stance or help her position with his hands going over her body. Personally, Hinata wanted the boy to do more than just show her the proper form, but that wasn't going to happen at the moment, for she needed to grow stronger first before she got her chance with the boy. "Okay Hinata, it's time to rest up before I show you another stance," he said, with her sitting down on a grass field and Hinata doing the same and sat beside the blonde boy. Naruto then handed her a bottle of water, which she gladly accepted and was happy to be in his presence for the moment. Soon the calm silence became too unbearable to deal with, as such she decided to strike up a conversation. "So Naruto-kun, how do you like it here?" she asked, with Naruto shrugging his shoulders. "It's been bearable, but I can't say that I like it here. Just a few things have caught my eye, nothing more," he said before taking a swig of his water. "Well, have you made any more friends? Besides me, Shino-kun and Kiba-san?" she asked, with Naruto looking off in the distance before he spoke. "I suppose that I have some friends, but one of them appears to be a fellow member of your clan," he said, with her looking at him in small wonder. "You know A.G.E, she asked, with Naruto looking towards her with a raised eyebrow. "Neeson? I thought he was your cousin," Naruto asked, with Hinata nodding. "Yes, he is, but I see him as a brother, although he doesn't view me the same way," she said, with her head down. Naruto saw that her attitude was changing and he needed to get her out of that funk. As such, he grasped the underside of her chin and caused her to look at him. Her face blushed brightly at her chin being held in such a way, but didn't mind in the least since it was Naruto's hands. "Hinata, you are allowing yourself to feel self-doubt again, and as long as I'm here you will not be allowed to doubt yourself in the least. Got it?" he said as he removed his hand from her chin, although she was hoping he would keep it there and pull her into his proximity. "I shall take care of Neji, although he will be more open to what I will say as opposed to the way he was before when I first met him," he said before standing up and had Hinata follow so that they could continue with the lesson. Then flashback. Then last but not least came Team 9, or as he called them, Team Fist. All three held skills and high talents in Taijutsu, but were far too versatile in their field of technique, so he decided to train them in areas outside their field. He began to train the three in swordsmanship with a similar style called Beast Strike, which was a style that didn't hold a specific form to follow. The style would follow the flow of a person's spiritual essence, and what he got was what he expected to see. Lee's essence resembled that of a primate, as they were nothing but energy when the time came. Neji was more of a crane or a falcon, a calculating animal that took time before engaging. The last was Tenten, and her essence resembled a panda bear, a calm creature that could turn on you at any moment. While he was training the three of them, he had different experiences from each one. Flashback. Time with Lee. Okay Lee, the first thing I'm going to need from you is an assessment of all that you know. He said with Lee sitting before him. I cannot use ninjutsu and jinjutsu, so I focus solely on my taijutsu. I can use the Goken style and the 8 chakra gates, but I can only open about 5 of them right now. He said with Naruto whistling loudly before he spoke up. That's quite impressive for one that's not even what some would call normal shinobi. However, at the same time, it's your greatest weakness as well. He said with Lee looking at him with confusion. What do you mean exactly? He said with Naruto putting up a finger. 1. When you're fighting a shinobi and they realize that you can't use ninjutsu, then all they would have to is keep their distance long enough to get in the victory. That assessment would take them a total of 50 seconds, maybe even shorter if they are wise. So that would mean that you would have to defeat your opponent within that time frame, and if he is above your level, then you would be forced to use your 8-gate and lotus techniques. He said before holding up a second finger. Once you use the 8 gates, your body will give off untold amounts of fatigue, and that will leave you weak for the rest of the fight. It will also render you an easy target to either kill or capture in order to get information. Plus, you won't be able to use the gates for a certain amount of time, and maybe longer, depending on the number of gates you use at a time. So if you were to use all 5 gates at once and when you use the lotus technique, your body will become just a mass of pulled muscle and flesh ready to be killed. He said before he held up his third finger. Lastly, is that when you fight using just the lotus style and the 8 gates, it will create a great combo of power, speed, and strength, but it will only work for one person. If you fought more than one shinobi, and one of them is either a censor, an analyst, or just being very good at long-distance fighting, then you'll be easy pickings for them. Sure, you could take out one, but who's to say that you'll have the same luck with your second opponent? He would have already learned how you fight and created 3 possible ways to defeat you. He said with Lee looking down on that, as he never truly looked into it like that. But what can I do? Guy-sensei is the only true taijutsu master, and I can't use jutsu. He said with Naruto smirking at him. That is where you're wrong my friend, as there are other options to fighting without ninjutsu. Hell, a friend of mine from my travels can't use chakra either, but he's found his way around that. He said with Lee raising an eyebrow at that. Well, what did he do? He asked. He discovered that he had a rare disease among the shinobi world that makes our body's chakra systems not develop. You see, he learned that while he could still access the 8 gates he couldn't mold his chakra like all of us can. Instead he focused on his taijutsu, kinjutsu, and training his body. For you I would say that you only focused on your technique and not your body so that it could handle the stress of the style. I will be working with you on those 3 criterias with your body coming first, then after that I will move on to teaching you more taijutsu styles. He said with Lee looking as if he was drooling at the prospect. How many styles do you know Naruto-san? He asked with Naruto stroking his chin. Probably 5, it's been a while since I learned a new style, but I digress from that as I only plan on showing you 2 styles to incorporate into the Goken style. After you learn these styles, I will teach you kinjutsu, but I think I might have to do some research on you, since I think I might know your clan. He said with Lee's eyes widening. You know of my clan? Please tell me, I've been dying to learn of them all my life. He said with Naruto shaking his head. Not yet as I don't have all the details yet, but I might have an idea. He said before he pulled out a scroll and tossed it to Lee, who caught it in hand. That is a training regimen that I want you to follow to the very letter. Your body needs to be developed to be able to withhold certain amounts of stress, so I want you to buy a set of armor weights, also get a sword while you're at it, since I will be teaching you kinjutsu. Once you do that, go buy some new clothes and they better not be green. He said with Lee looking shocked at that. But I like these clothes, so why would you want me to throw them away? He asked with Naruto snarling for a moment. Because you'll stick out like a straight guy in a gay club, so go find some new clothes and remember nothing green. He said with Lee nodding before he got up to get what was asked of him. Then flashback. After that day Lee returned with a set of black full body weighted body armor on his forearms, legs, and chest area. The boy knew that they were heavy, but not this heavy, as he removed the weights Guy had him wear for his taijutsu style to be taken to a new height. Under the weights were a visible brown bodysuit that stopped around his neck. Lee also brought a katana as Naruto instructed him, and the blade was beautiful. It was a long dual-sided black sword with a red handguard that resembled a 6-sided star. The handle was wrapped in brown leather and 6-point star etching going down the handle. He decided to name the sword Kurishwensha, Black Illusion, and couldn't wait until he trained in the sword arts. Naruto also instructed him to get used to the armor first and run in it at his normal speed before increasing the weights. He should get used to it pretty quickly with his high amounts of stamina and the previous training with Naruto told him that the armor is solely meant for training purposes, so if he wished to continue wearing armor, then he should buy some battle armor as well. Lee was now to the point that he could run at half his normal speed, but would tire out a little faster than he normally would, but Naruto figured that he was training constantly to get used to the weights, so his progress was understandable. Next came A.G.E, who Naruto had to say that he enjoyed hanging with since they had a lot in common. Flashback. Time with A.G.E. Naruto stood before the Hyuga branch member, who held a look of focus on his face and was prepared for whatever the boy had planned to teach him. Okay A.G.E, before we begin this training, I have a question that I wish for you to answer. He said with A.G.E nodding his head and prepared answer with the best of his ability. Naruto stared at him for a moment before he spoke. Why is it that you aren't on good terms with your cousin Hinata? He said with the boy's eyes widening. Had that question been asked before meeting Naruto, he would have snapped on the person asking said question. However, he was different now, so it was more of a surprise than an instant anger-inducing question. When I was 5 years old, my father was taken from me after Hinata-sama was kidnapped by a Kumo shinobi posing as bringer of peace between Konoha and Kumo. When Hinata-sama kidnapper was found by Hiashi-sama, the man was killed and she was saved. But Kumo wasn't willing to let that go and demanded Hiashi-sama's head as retribution for the death of the Kumo ambassador. However, my father was instead sent in Hiashi-sama's place so that the clan's secrets wouldn't be discovered by their obvious intentions of learning the Byakugan's secrets. I know that it wasn't her fault, but I just can't help but not blame Hinata-sama for the death of my father. He said with Naruto looking him in the eye before he spoke. That's nothing but a warped POV from your part A.G.E, as you forgot something very important, your caged bird's seal. If your father wasn't sent to Kumo to be executed, then you guys wouldn't even exist. The village would have been attacked by Kumo and two things would have happened. One, your whole clan would have been slaughtered by Kumo as they would know all the abilities of your Byakugan and the weaknesses they contain. 2. With your clan's death at the hands of Kumo, Konoha would be dealt an extremely crushing blow by the enemy and we would become weaker than the current situation we are in now, with the Uchiha clan now being all but wiped out. You should also stop blaming Hinata for your problems, as she was only a child at the time and that kidnapper just took what was easy. You can't blame her for problems that were never her own fault to begin with. Naruto said with A.G.E looking down on the ground for a moment before he looked up. I will try Naruto, but I can't make any promises. He said with Naruto snorting before he shrugged his shoulders. Don't worry about all that, as in time you will. Now onto your training. He said with A.G.E perking up at that. What will you teach me? He asked out of curiosity. I will be teaching you a new fighting style and your elemental chakra so that you'll learn new jutsus. He said with A.G.E frowning. I'm afraid that I can't learn those Naruto, as learning a new taijutsu style and new jutsu would cheapen the pure form of the Hyuga clan. He said with Naruto looking at him with his mouth agape. You actually believe that? Then allow me to teach you something. Specialization will lead to stagnancy. Stagnancy will lead to weakness. Weakness will lead to death. Your clan style is designed for close quarter combat and chakra strikes. If you were in a situation that had you facing a long-range fighter, you would have to find ways to get close enough to strike, and let's not even count if he or she is a sensor type or a strategist, as you'll just be a sitting duck in battle. Plus if you stick to just the Gyuukin style, then you'll be easily defeated by someone who has faced that style before. This is why you need to learn more than just one section of fighting, as that way you'll gain more power in the long run. Naruto said with A.G.E unable to argue that. I guess maybe it is time for a change. He said before Naruto tossed him an object which he caught. It was a short sword made of high carbon steel. It was about 2 feet long. The handle was made of a tough heat-resistant material and the hilt was hooked. The blade was straight for a while but swelled towards the tip. A.G.E looked at the boy in small surprise before he spoke. That sword is to help you in the long run, but for now let's start your training. Naruto said before he got into a stance with A.G.E following suit. Then flashback. Naruto trained A.G.E on the speed of his strikes and the flow of his attacks. The boy was able to get the style that he was learning and had even managed to integrate it into the Gyuukin style, although he was keeping it a secret for now. Naruto figured that as much but started to teach him some ninjutsu, which to their surprise was A.G.E.'s very own element, lightning. The boy learned 2 lightning techniques that Naruto held, which was the lightning release. Static edge and the lightning release. Thunder web. The thunder web technique was a variant to the static edge but allowed more lightning to come out and attack multiple enemies at once, but the strikes were wild and weren't able to be directed like the static edge technique. This was when A.G.E inverted the move to work with his short sword that he dubbed Flying Thunder. Naruto figured that with more training and a little more time, A.G.E will become a great close to mid-range fighter. Lastly came Tenten, who he had to say enjoyed being around the most. Flashback. Time with Tenten. Naruto, what exactly are you going to teach me? Tenten asked with Naruto looking her over for a moment before he spoke. I want you to tell me all of your skills before I give you a proper assessment. he said with Tenten nodding before she pulled out her scrolls. I'm a master of weaponry ninjutsu and I'm using every basic weapon in the world. She said with Naruto nodding his head before he spoke. Well, that is quite the feat to have, it won't last you long in a fight, especially if you were to compete against someone that can use wind ninjutsu. It is also a weakness to surround yourself in one skill, as I know some people that are able to withstand weapons and can take very little damage from the sharpest of blades. You also can't help but think of the idea of fighting someone that fights in mid to long distance fighting, as you can't exactly plan how you are going to attack them with only a weapon in hand, right? He said with Tenten looking down a bit. I never truly looked at it like that, but what do you suppose I do? She asked with Naruto tossing her a scroll, which she caught. I want to work more on your ninjutsu and on how to use that little weapon that I gave you in that scroll. He said with Tenten opening the scroll to reveal her newest weapon. Tenten looked at it in surprise before looking at Naruto for a more moment before she squealed loudly before she ran up to him and planted a big one on him. Tenten then released his face and smiled brightly while Naruto looked at her with a surprised expression. Thank you, Naruto. I'll be great with this weapon, thank you. She said before hugging him, which made Naruto just stand there for a moment before he said something that he already knew the answer to. I guess you like that weapon, don't you? He said with Tenten nodding vigorously before grabbing it off the ground and stood ready for Naruto to teach her. Okay, it starts like this, he said as he began to show her what to do. And I know that I should go into detail about the weapon I gave her, but I want that to be a little surprise in the future. Then flashback. However, no one couldn't say that they had the most training than Kurenai as Naruto turned up the heat on her Kenjutsu training. The black-haired woman found herself physically drained by the end of his session, while he would still hold enough energy to last him by the end of the training. In fact, there were times that she was so drained that Naruto allowed her to stay in his home, sometimes back to back, before she was finally able to take the stress of the training and would have enough to take herself back to her apartment. Of course, there were times when Kurenai would ask if she could stay, which he didn't mind since he was getting used to her presence around him. But on one of those nights came something that surprised them both, but would start something a little more than what they currently had. Flashback 2 weeks ago, Naruto laid a tired Kurenai down on his bed as said woman was far too drained to even walk, much less make it home. He knew that he should lighten up on her training, but for some odd reason he felt as if he wanted to make her training harder on purpose so that she would ask to stay over for the night. He had this feeling that Kurenai felt the same, but didn't even wish to point it out, seeing as how she would welcome the idea of getting drained physically so she could stay over. He shook off those ideas before he left the room to go sleep on the couch, but a soft hand grabbed his wrist, telling him to stop. He turned around to find one Kurenai sitting up on the bed, her hand still on his wrist, and was looking down on the bed a little. Naruto, if it isn't too much trouble, do you think you could sleep here tonight WW with me? She said with a small blush on her face. Naruto looked at her with a raised eyebrow and a face of confusion. Are you sure, Kurenai? I mean, I'm just fine sleeping on the couch. He said with the woman shaking her head. No, I don't want to sleep with the idea of you being uncomfortable after all that you've done for me and allowing me to take your bed. The least I can do is let you sleep here. She said with Naruto looking at her for a moment before he nodded his head. As you wish. He said before he walked over to his closet and began to remove his cloths until he was down to nothing but his boxers. When he turned around, he was greeted with the sight of Kurenai and nothing but a thin white bra and thong set that gave him a sense of arousal. The woman was blushing profusely at seeing him half naked again, although inwardly she wanted him to be fully naked. Brushing those thoughts aside, she pulled the covers to his side of the bed and watched as the blonde boy walked over to his bed and laid in it. As he laid down, Kurenai then surprised him more by laying her head down on his chest and hugging him close to her. Thank you, Naruto, for being so kind to me. She said as she laid her head on his chest and began to fall asleep. Naruto then placed his arm behind her and held her close before he placed his head on the pillow. No problem, Kurenai, good night. He said as he slowly fell asleep. As his eyes closed, he could have sworn he heard her respond, good night, Naruto-kun. Then flashback. After that day, things between them were never the same, as they would train together and spend time together, either having a bite to eat or hanging around the park and enjoying the peaceful silence. If one were to look at the two, they would say that they were dating in an instant, however the two shinobi were oblivious to this, or at least Naruto was. Right now the two shinobi were currently in the hot springs with Naruto paying for both himself and her. Kurenai was surprised by this, but all the boy told her was that she deserved it for all the hard work she has done. After that, the black-haired woman couldn't object to the boy's act of kindness towards her. Kurenai sat in the relaxing waters, allowing the heat to slowly free her tense skin after the last training session she had with Naruto. The boy was a truly great teacher, as she never felt her strength being this high in years. She would have to say that after the blonde's training, she went up a level from low jounin to possible mid jounin, maybe a little higher to be between mid jounin and high jounin. Her thoughts then changed from Naruto's teaching her to the boy's personal life, and while she knew more than anyone else in this village about the mysterious blonde, she didn't truly have knowledge on him other than the fact that he was teaching her. She would be lying to herself if she didn't say that she had a crush on the boy and maybe could go as far to liking him. There was something about him that just drove her nuts and made her long to have him close to her whenever he was near her presence. She quickly shook her head free from those thoughts as another person entered the waters, and she turned her head to find one Mitarashi Anko sitting in the relaxing waters with her body as naked as hers. She didn't have to worry about seeing her best friend naked, as they already seen each other birthday suits enough times to be at ease around the other. Anko smirked at her friend before speaking up. "So Kuro-chan, have you gotten your boyfriend yet?" she said with Kurenai blushing while scowling at her. "Anko-chan, I told you that he is not my boyfriend. He is just teaching me about my clan and their fighting style, which by the way reminds me. Have you taken him up on his offer?" she asked with something evident of jealousy in her voice. Anko caught on to the tone but decided to let it go, since her friend was always known to hold in her emotions instead of expressing them. "No, I haven't decided yet. I've been trying to look through any history on my clan, but all I drew were blanks on each book that I picked. I have to say though that he got it right when he said that I loved sex," Anko said, as she was a very wild lover since she wasn't playing for one team. You could say that she was a free agent signing in and withdrawing from different teams. "You should take him up on his offer, Anko-chan, he has really helped me out over the past 3 weeks of training. I've actually gone up a level in skill and with more training to come, I'll be mid-Anbu by the end of this year," she said with happiness in her voice while Anko decided to call her on that. "Yeah, and maybe you'll be the one to turn him into a man before the end of the year, not unless I get him of course," she said jokingly, but she was pretty sure that if push came to shove, she would mean those words. Kurenai then gave her a small glare, which unknowingly told Anko the whole story. Her best friend is attracted to the boy and could possibly have strong feelings for him. "Anko-chan, as much as I love you I'm afraid that I won't let you take him from me," she said before realizing what she just said but knew the damage was already done. Anko then got a little closer to the black-haired woman, her smirk never faltering. "And the reason is because," Anko said trailing off with Kurenai blushing up a storm before she spoke. "Because I want him," she said with Anko cheering loudly and jumped into the air, her assets bouncing up and down. "Yes, Kurenai-chan, you're finally being honest with yourself," she said before hugging the black-haired woman but unknowingly placed Kurenai's face into her bust area. Kurenai blushed at that before she pushed Anko off her, with Anko also realizing what she just did and blushed brightly. "Sorry Kurenai-chan, I'm just so happy for you," she said with Kurenai nodding before a smirk came to her face. "You know that I'm willing to share him though, right?" Kurenai said with Anko looking at her in surprise. "You would share him? Why?" Anko asked with Kurenai sighing before she spoke. "Because I can see that you like him and I already know about Hinata. I think that there are 2 other girls that want him as well, and as much as I want him for myself, it wouldn't be fair to all of you. But let this be known, I get first dibs on him before you all get your shot," Kurenai said with Anko smirking at her. "I see no problem with that," Anko said until she did something very unexpected. Before Kurenai could even see it coming, Anko closed the distance between and planted a small kiss on her friend's lips. Kurenai's eyes widened before they closed and she found herself kissing Anko back until 10 seconds went by and they both separated. "Thank you," Anko said before sitting back in the spring and relaxing. Kurenai did the same as her friend and allowed the warm water to heal her body. "No problem." Meanwhile, Namikaze Naruto was now walking towards the male side of the hot spring with only his black shorts on, exposing his upper body to the women that worked there. They all had bright blushes on their faces and some were having minor fantasies about their hands going over Naruto's body to give him a massage. The blonde however didn't even acknowledge it as he continued walking forward before he heard the sounds of perverted giggling. At first he ignored it, but when he heard it a few more times he decided to go investigate it. He then traveled towards the sound that grew louder and appeared to be coming from the women's side of the hot springs. Upon his arrival, he caught the sight of an old man peeping at the women bath. He wore a forest green guy with fishnet arm and leg bands and red wooden sandals. Over all that he wore a red trench coat. He also wore a custom headband that had 2 horns sticking on the top with the kanji for oil on it and had 2 red lines going down his cheeks. Before anyone knew what came next, Naruto spoke. "Hey pervert, why are you peeping on the women's bath?" he said with the old man shouting in surprise and faced Naruto. The old man looked at Naruto, who was now looking above the old man's head. Naruto then pointed behind the old pervert, who slowly turned his head to find a mob of women in bathrobes and murderous looks. The old man gulped before he looked towards Naruto, who was now as far from the mob as he was. With a mighty roar, a woman pounced on Jiraiya and began to pound him into the ground, with many more joining in before 2 minutes passed and the girls all got up. One of them looked at Naruto and thought that he was in on all this. "Were you peeping on us as well?" she said as she was ready to go another round. Naruto simply shook his head to let her know that he has done no such thing. I'm afraid that peeping on women is not my forte, however I'm sure you all wouldn't even mind if I did. You might have even invited me to your side of the waters. Naruto said with the women blushing before they ran back to their bath. After the women were gone, Naruto sighed as he grabbed the old man and healed his wounds with his healing technique. Once the wounds were healed and the old man came to, he saw the man's eyes widen like he saw a ghost. Me Minato. You're alive. This surprised him. It appears that the old man knew his father. You knew my father. He said. The old man looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Yes, I was Minato's teacher Jiraiya. He said with Naruto's eyes widening slightly before they relaxed. Then I guess you're my godfather, since father did say that a man named Jiraiya would be my godfather. He said with Jiraiya looking shocked. You mean to tell me that you're that brat's son? He asked with Naruto nodding. Yes, Namek is Naruto at your service. He said with the old man smirking at him. Well then it looks like we got some things to talk about. However, I'm afraid that this place is too open-eared, so let's go someplace more private. He said before he left in a puff of smoke and Naruto in a whirl of feathers. Later that night, Naruto entered his apartment with a small smile on his face, although it was well hidden in the darkness. He took off his clothes and prepared to get some good rest, but he stopped when he discovered something that he missed. He looked at the picture of his parents closely and noticed something was off. On the far left corner on the bottom of the frame was a slip of paper that must have missed his eyes up until now, which was confusing since he never missed a thing in his life. He picked up the slip and unraveled it to reveal what looked like a blood seal. After biting his thumb and wiping the blood over the seal, a puff of smoke rose from the seal, and out came a scroll. He then opened it and saw that it was in his father's handwriting, so he began to read what his father left him this time. Dear Naruto, if you are reading this then that means you saw the slip and are hopefully at the right age of 15, but who knows at this point. Now what I wanted to do with this letter was inform you that over the years, my village and clan have built some animosity towards each, and as such, I ask the following to issue an arranged marriage between you and several others. 3 of them are from Konoha, and 2 others are from outside the village, so that we may instill further peace between each other, one of which is greatly needed as for years we have been working an alliance agreement between each other, and the only way to do it was by marriage. As such you are engaged to the princess of the Hyuga clan, the princess of the Tenshin clan, and the princess of the Inuzuka clan. You are also engaged to Wind countries, princess of Wind and Snow countries, princess of Snow. I hope that you aren't too mad at me, but look on the bright side. Well, there is no bright side to this, but it must be completed or else it will result in a war. Goodbye my son and hope you make plenty of children. Naruto looked at the note with his eyebrow twitching, as Minato drew a picture of him frowning with 5 smiling women by his side, along with a ball and chain attached to his ankle, with the words game over written under the picture. I hate you so much right now father that I'm almost tempted to try to resurrect you just to kill you again. He thought before placing the note on table and climbed into his bed to drift off into sleep. He would deal with this in the morning. And done and done. There go, and that marks the end of another one, so I hope you guys are happy about the new update. Now I know that some of you feel like I rushed Kurenai into liking Naruto, but in all truth, she already had an attraction to him, and since they spent a lot of time together her feelings grew. Some people are worse with that style of pairing, majority of it being the Naruto Sakura fans, as some would do an instant love scene to death. For example, Naruto walked down the street and walked right into Yujito Nai somehow. I'm sorry miss, however I'm surprised at how pretty you are. He said with the girl nodding her head. Of course I am and you are very handsome. I think I love you. She said before getting closer to him. I think I love too, although we don't know each other's name. He said with him extending his hand that Yujito took. I'm Yujito, I'm Naruto, and with that they made out right on the spot. Come on now, what I like to do is give time to have the feelings develop, so that way it will look far more realistic. Also to those brimming the strong scent of stupidity and are planning to say something about that last scene, just know this. He would have found it either way so I just did it now, so get a life. Some people are also wondering why I refer to certain people as being stupid, and the answer is simple. Stupidity is but a comfort zone for people to live on, as they can be themselves when they are stupid and enjoy themselves when they being their natural stupid selves. However, that comfort zone would lead them to make themselves believe that they are smart and try to flame people or just simply talking as if they wrote a million stories and they have zero proof to back up their claim, which will result in utter humiliation on their part and even more from me. I don't take too kindly to anything negative and I sure as hell don't like reviews. Some people act like pussies when they get flamed and let those assholes enjoy what they've done and caused you to quit your work. I on the other hand are on the other side of that spectrum, as I will take your ass down a peg and show you that you fucked with the wrong motherfucker. It matters not the color of thy own skin, for he shall endureth a flame of hatred and respond with an almighty ass kicking of his own 1,000-fold. In fact let me tell you a funny story. Last year the original Tenraku got a flame and it was from two bitches named AFROLORD0 and Pursilveravan. They said some words and talked as if they were the best writers on this site, which is impossible since nobody knows who's the best writer on this website, so we need to have an award show of sorts to find out. They soon got a response from me in a form of a review that one of them wrote, and the following events happened a month later. They both changed their names, one dropped his story and deleted everything on his profile, and the other one doesn't let her mouth run her life again. So if you want to try it, go ahead. It's been a while since I kicked someone's ass with my words, and I haven't gotten much of a challenge since. What if Naruto has Angel Bloodline Council bashing? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.